Chapter 4023 Shark attacked. The silver-masked man's face immediately turned pale. Yes, it's a level 64 bloodthirsty ironskin shark. Why are there so many level 64 bloodthirsty ironskin sharks gathered here? Retreat, retreat now. The silver-masked man couldn't care less about Yun Chujio and the others now. Besides, there were so many level 64 bloodthirsty ironskin sharks. Yun Chujio and the others had no way to survive. However, he soon realized that he was wrong. That was because he heard Yun Chujio shouting clearly, "Little guys, go. Eat them." Following Yun Chujio's voice, those level 64 bloodthirsty ironskin sharks actually swam towards their three ships. Yun Chujio could actually command a group of sharks. How is this possible? As the blood tree had just been destroyed, the sea beasts had not returned from the deep sea, so the sharks could only eat half their fill for the past few days. Now that they saw the silver-masked man and the others, they naturally cried out in excitement. Yun Chujio stood on the big ship and commanded the sharks, "Single Eye, knock their ship over first. When they fall into the water, they will be at your mercy." When the Single Eye sharks heard the name Single Eye, they could not help but freeze. However, they still followed Yun Chujio's instructions and ordered the sharks to crash into the three big ships. Although the silver-masked man and the others were not bad on land, how could they be a match for the bloodthirsty iron-skinned sharks in the sea? Soon, the three big ships were overturned into the sea. The sharks swarmed up, and in a moment the sea surface was dyed red with blood. Even though the silver-masked man and the others were enemies, Li Zhuangji and the others still felt goosebumps when they saw this bloody scene. They couldn't help but feel a lingering fear. If junior sister Tianyun hadn't persuaded the sharks a few days ago, they would probably have ended up like this. The silver-masked man struggled in the water. He simply regretted it. If he had known that Yun Chujio could command the sharks, he would have set up an ambush by the sea. Sooner or later he would have killed them. It was too late to regret now. The silver-masked man and the others were not good at fighting in the water. In addition to the large number of sharks, they were all dead after 2 hours. Compared to the shock of Li Zhuangji and the others, Yun Chujio's expression was very calm. In this world, the strong preyed on the weak. This was nothing out of the ordinary. After Yun Chujio greeted the one-eyed shark, she returned. "We have to hurry. If Elder Wan finds out that there's still no news from the group of people he sent, he might send more people over. We have to pass through that no-fly zone as soon as possible," Yun Chujio said solemnly. Li Zhuangji and the others were now obedient to Yun Chujio's words, so they naturally had no objections. Moreover, they had learned their lesson. Even though they were very curious about Yun Chujio's many secrets, they were tactful and did not ask about it. Yun Chujio also pretended that nothing had happened because she had already calculated that when they were about to reach the sect, she would let the Meng Yanshou weave a dream for them and push the blame onto Xue Wujian and Feng anyway. It was not like she had not saved her before. However, when she thought of the three newly made puppets, she was very suspicious. How could these three puppets have modified the 7-star sword formation? Could it be that they learned it when they saw the drifters fooling around in the sword pool? This was also possible. After all, puppet number 4 and puppet number 5 could also use it according to the rules after they had seen it a few times. There was no choice. She was smart, so the puppets that were separated from her divine sense were naturally very smart. Chapter 4024 Although Yun Chujio couldn't wait to take out the three puppets and ask them about it, due to Zhao Hui and the others, she just needed to endure it for a while and prepare to study it after she returned to the sect. The group arrived at the beach at the fastest speed, and then they passed through the no-fly zone without stopping. When they boarded the flying spirit tool, they finally let out a sigh of relief. Moreover, Yun Chujio was extra cautious. She did not ride on the flying spirit tool with the sex logo, but on an ordinary flying spirit tool. This guy's carefulness helped them to avoid another wave of ambush because Elder Wan was fully prepared this time. He even prepared a group of people along the way to prevent Yun Chujio and the others from escaping. However, they didn't expect that Yun Chujio and the others didn't ride on the flying spirit tool with the sex mark, so they let Yun Chujio and the others pass through the ambush area. They were about to reach the sect. Li Zhuangji gnashed his teeth and said, "My father has always been loyal to Elder Wan. I didn't expect him to send people to kill us. This is outrageous." When we return to the sect, I will make my father report to the sect leader to punish Elder Wan for murdering his fellow disciples. Yun Chujo looked at him as if she was looking at an idiot. Do you think it will work? We were almost bitten to death by the king of fire spiritual beasts back then. In the end, didn't we just let it go? Not to mention that Lu Zhong is already dead. Even if we bring him to the sect leader, Elder Wan will remove himself completely. His henchmen will even bite back and say that we are slandering him. Li Zhuangji clenched his fist. I don't believe it. Don't tell me that the testimony of so many of us is still not credible. Yun Chujo sneered. So what if we have so many people? Back then, as the sect leader's personal disciple, didn't Marshal Uncle Zhang also have to suffer an unjustified injustice? Without sufficient strength, even the most conclusive evidence would be wiped out. Where do you think those people who robbed and killed us came from? It was obvious that it was a force that Elder Wan had privately nurtured. If he had such a large force outside the sect, wouldn't he be able to cover the sky within the sect? Do you think that the sect leader would fall out with Elder Wan because of us little shrimps? Every time Yun Chujo said this, Li Zhuangzi's face turned paler. Then what should we do? Don't tell me that we can only swallow this? Don't make any moves and take things slowly. We insist that we have been ambushed by the Divine Devil Hall, so all the plans that he had prepared have fallen through. Then, we will let your father and Elder One continue to feign civility with each other. Elder One can't get to the bottom of it for the time being, so he won't make any moves for the time being. We will think of a way to erode his power, and the final attack will hit. Yun Chujo said slowly. Zhao Hui reminded her from the side, Junior Sister Yun, when Lu Zhong attacked us on the sea, the number of people increased by hundreds. He probably sent people from other places. Maybe Elder One already knows that we've exposed Lu Zhong's identity. Why would he believe our story? Yun Chujo smiled lightly and said, I didn't want him to believe it at first. I just wanted him to wander around and buy time for us. Manager Li had followed Elder Wan for many years and knew a lot about him. Then, he would think of a way to join hands with the sect leader. In time, he would definitely be able to uproot Elder Wan's power. Zhao Hu's mind was flexible and he understood Yun Chuji's meaning. As for Li Zhuangji and the others, they were all confused. Fortunately, they now firmly believed in Yun Chujo and immediately nodded in agreement. Chapter 40-25. Self-confession. When they were about to reach the sect, Yun Chujo secretly knocked Zhao Hui and the others unconscious. Then, she had the nightmare beast weave a dream for them, making them think that they had been saved by Shui Wuji and Enfeng. After Zhao Hui and the others woke up, Yun Chujo strengthened the story again. Although the six of them felt that something was strange, they still accepted the dream that Meng Yanshou had woven for them. Finally, the flying spirit tool arrived outside the Nameless Sword Sect's mountain gate. When the crowd saw the Nameless Sword Sect's plaque, their eyes suddenly heated up. They had finally returned. The 7 of them did not go to the bounty hall. Instead, they went straight to the meeting hall. They did not expect to meet Elder Wan, who had rushed over. Li Zhuangzi's body suddenly tensed up. Yun Chujo glared at him before he lowered his head and suppressed his anger. When Elder Wan learned that Yun Chujo and the other 3 had returned to the sect, he was both shocked and angry. Only then did he rush to the meeting hall. He swept a warning glance at the 7 of them before walking into the meeting hall. Yun Chujo and the other 3 could not enter directly. Instead, they could only enter after being informed by the disciples. After obtaining permission, Yun Chujo and the other 3 entered the meeting hall. Master Ouyang asked with some confusion, You said that you have something to report. What is it? Zhao Hui and the others did not say anything. This kind of work that required eloquence naturally had to be handed over to Yun Chujo. Yun Chujo said with an expression of lingering fear, Master, we were ambushed on the way back from completing our mission. Moreover, the other party clearly had a premeditated plan. If it wasn't for our great fortune, we would have died hundreds of times. The most infuriating thing was that the mastermind was actually... Yun Chujo looked at Elder Wan as she said this. Elder Wan was already prepared. He snorted coldly. Yun Chujo, you have to pay attention to the evidence when you speak. What right do you have to say that I sent people to kill you? Yun Chujo looked at him in shock and said, Elder Wan, I didn't say that you were the mastermind. Why are you in such a hurry to deny it? Could it really be you who did it? Elder Wan gritted his teeth in frustration. He was too surprised that Yun Chujio and the others had returned safely, so he was a little flustered. What was the difference between this and admitting it without beating them up? However, this stupid girl had underestimated him. No matter how glib her tongue was, even if he refused to admit it, she would not be able to shake his position. Just as he was about to defend himself, he heard Yun Chujio say, I did not expect the mastermind to be the Divine Devil Hall. They sent hundreds of people to kill us. If it was not for my fiancé's men who arrived, we would not have survived. Elder Wan did not expect Yun Chujio to say that. He even suspected that the information he received was fake. Could it be that Yun Chujio and the others did not discover Lu Zhong's identity? Lu Zhong had lied to him? Elder Wan was shocked and uncertain for a moment, so he did not interrupt. He listened to Yun Chujio's vivid narration of what happened. Master Ouyang had been through a lot. After seeing Elder Wan's previous performance, he had some doubts about Yun Chujio's words. However, he did not say it out loud. He just followed Yun Chujio's words and asked for some details. Then, he said that he would inform the other forces about this matter, and work together to find clues about the Divine Devil Hall. Finally, Master Ouyang waved his hand, indicating that Yun Chujio and the others could leave. Yun Chujio and the others immediately left the meeting hall, and went to the bounty hall to hand in their tasks. Chapter 40-26. A puppet showing off. After handing in the mission, they went to a quiet place. Yun Chujio then said to Li Zhuangji, Go back and tell your father the truth. I believe he will know what to do. Also, don't tell outsiders about the Blood Sand Island. Otherwise, there will be more trouble. Everyone hurriedly nodded and then dispersed. Yun Chujio strolled back to her courtyard. She thought that she would see the drifters when she opened the door, but she didn't expect to see nothing. Yun Chujio curled her lips and thought that the drifters probably knew that she wasn't here, so they didn't come to cause trouble. Yun Chujio took a shower and then went into the courtyard. She released the puppets number 6, number 7, and number 8 and was ready to ask them about the sword formation. However, the moment she released the 3 puppets seemed to have gone mad and were running around in the courtyard. They even went to the swing to play on it. Yun Chujio. Were the 3 puppets crazy? Yun Chujio quickly used her spiritual sense to order them to come back. However, it was useless. Puppet number 6 even shook its butt as if it was showing off to Yun Chujio. It almost angered He Shinjo to death. Was this a rebellion? Yun Chujio immediately stood up from the stone bench and walked toward puppet number 6, who was showing off with a gloomy face. However, in the next moment, she was stunned to see the 3 puppets minding their own business. She took out their puppet discs from the drive shell and released wisps of red mist from the puppet discs to wrap around the 3 puppet discs and run away. Yes, run away. Yun Chujio was instantly petrified. After a while, she gritted her teeth and said, What the fuck is going on? She recalled the incident where the 3 puppets knew how to use the sword formation. It was probably the doing of those drifters. However, she had to admit that those drifters had saved her life. Thinking about it, she could spare them for now. After all, there was still a long time ahead and she had plenty of time to deal with them. Yun Chujio comforted herself. The main reason was that the drifters' headquarters were in the sword pool. Even if she wanted to settle the score with them, she couldn't do anything about it. Just as she was thinking about it, the drifters hopped in again. However, the 3 puppet discs were missing. They had probably been sent back to the sword pool. Yun Chujio couldn't be bothered with them and allowed them to hop on the swing. She sorted out what had happened recently. She didn't know the origin of the blood tree, but the death of such an evil thing was naturally a good thing. If Manager Li knew that Elder Wan had robbed and killed Li Zhuangji, he would definitely join Master Ouyang. Sooner or later, Master Ouyang and Elder Wan would fight each other. Only by getting rid of Elder Wan could she feel at ease. However, as there were too many implications involved, she was afraid that they would not be able to come to blows for a while. Moreover, Elder Wan would definitely have other tricks up his sleeve. It was better for her to be more careful. After a few days, the bounty hall had another mission. This time it was a mission to hammer the sword billet. Yun Chujio was not surprised by this. When she was selecting inner disciples, she had heard of this new rule. That was that inner disciples had to help hammer the sword billet at irregular intervals, and they were not allowed to refuse. However, Yun Chujio had never expected that she would be assigned to the number 1 sword forging hall of the upper house. Wasn't that Elder Duamis' sword forging hall? Logically speaking, the status of the sword forging hall of the upper house was extraordinary. Why would an amateur like her be assigned to help hammer the sword blanks? Although Elder Duanmu had performed well in the last inner disciple selection, she had heard that he had a good personal relationship with Elder Wan. There couldn't be any conspiracy, right? Chapter 4027. New mission. Just as Yun Chujio was feeling a little surprised, Li Zhuangji arrived. Ever since he returned from the Blood Sand Island, Li Zhuangji often came over to give Yun Chujio some spirit fruits and food. He almost shocked the other disciples. Didn't Li Zhuangji have a bad relationship with Yun Chujio previously? He even caused a ruckus in the discipline hall. Why was he so attentive now? How would they know that Li Zhuangji was paying off his debt? Every time he sent some spirit fruits, Yun Chujio would deduct some spirit stones from his loan slip. It wasn't easy for him either. Yun Chujio saw him coming over and asked, "Is Elder Duanmu one of Elder Wan's people?" Li Zhuangji shook his head. "I heard from my father that although the two of them have a good relationship, Elder Duamis' mind is on forging the sword. Therefore, he doesn't participate in the fight between the sect leader and Elder Wan." Yun Chujio nodded. If that was the case, even if there was something fishy going on, Elder Duanmu would probably be kept in the dark. No matter what, since the mission had to be completed, she would go and take a look. Therefore, early the next morning, Yun Chujio strolled to the number 1 sword forging hall of the upper house. This sword forging hall was much more imposing than Hall Master Zuja's sword forging hall. There were even disciples guarding the door. The Prime Minister's former 3rd grade official. Although the 2 disciples guarding the door were also inner disciples, their eyes were almost fixed on their foreheads. They were very arrogant. After Yun Chujio explained the purpose of her visit, the 2 of them curled their lips. "A half-baked person like you was actually sent to our upper house's sword forging hall? Isn't that ridiculous?" Although the 2 of them said so, one of them still went in to pass the message. A moment later, that person said with some schadenfreude, "Elder Duanmu said to let you go in through the back door and then go to the backyard to clean the sword. If you do it well, you will be considered to have completed the task." That person thought that Yun Chujio would be extremely embarrassed and angry after hearing that, and would even argue with them. Who would have thought that Yun Chujio would immediately go to the back door with a smile and humming a song? What a joke. She was not stupid. It was much easier to clean a treasured sword than to hammer a sword billet. Only a fool would choose to hammer a sword billet. As for why Elder Duanmu did not allow her to hammer a sword billet, it was probably because of the old feudalism. He felt that women should not go near the weapon refining furnace. When Yun Chujio reached the back door, the disciple guarding the door had obviously received the notice. He did not ask any more questions and directly let Yun Chujio into the sword forging hall's backyard. Yun Chujio looked around and saw that although this was only the sword forging hall's backyard, it was very spacious and exquisite. There was even a rockery. Yun Chujio thought to herself, as expected of the sword forging hall of the upper house. It was indeed high-end and high-class. When she was looking around, she heard a cough. She looked up and saw Elder Duanmu looking at her with a straight face. Yun Chujio bowed with a smile. "Greetings, Elder Duanmu. I'm here to do a mission." Elder Duanmu nodded coldly. "Logically speaking, you should be assigned to the sword forging hall in the lower or middle court. Perhaps something went wrong with the bounty hall, which is why you were assigned to me. However, since you're here, I won't make things difficult for you. Wipe the treasure sword in the storeroom. When the sun sets, you can go back." Yun Chujio hurriedly said, "I understand. I promise to fulfill my duties." Elder Duamis' expression was still very cold. He asked a disciple behind him to tell Yun Chujio what to do, then turned around and went to the front yard. Chapter 4028. Sword polishing. Yun Chujio asked the disciple with a smile, "Thank you for your trouble, senior brother. May I know how to address you?" The disciple had a good attitude. He smiled and said, "Junior Sister Yun, you are welcome. I am Si Ping. Senior Brother Si, please tell me what I need to do," Yun Chujo said politely. Si Ping nodded and opened the door of the warehouse. The moment the door opened, Yun Chujo could feel the biting cold air coming from inside. There were several treasured swords in the room. Although some of them still had stains from the forging process, it could still be seen that these treasured swords were of high quality. They were indeed worthy of being the treasured swords forged by the sword forging hall of the upper house. Si Ping pointed at the swords in the room and said, "Junior Sister Yun, you only need to clean those stained swords. Don't miss anything. Be careful when you clean them. Don't hurt yourself." Yun Chujo felt that Si Ping was like a stream of fresh water in the sword forging hall, so she immediately thanked him. Si Ping just smiled and turned around to leave the room. However, a hint of sarcasm and viciousness flashed across his eyes. The reason why he specially emphasized wiping all the stained swords was to make Yun Chujo suffer. There was a sword in the room that could not be touched. It was the Thousand Slashes sword that Elder Duanmu had painstakingly forged over the years. Logically speaking, such a precious sword should be kept alone. However, in order to make the sword sharper, Elder Duanmu had specially placed it in this warehouse to nourish it with other swords. Si Ping had already broken the sword previously, but he had used some things to stick it together. As long as Yun Chujo touched it, it would definitely break into two pieces. Elder Duanmu loved swords as much as his life. When that time came, he would be in a much better situation than Yun Chujo. It was possible for him to kill Yun Chujo in a fit of rage. Soon it was sunset. Si Ping suppressed the excitement in his heart and pushed open the warehouse door. He said with a smile, "Junior Sister Yun, are you almost done cleaning it?" Yun Chujo said with a smile, "I'm just missing a few swords. Senior Brother Si, wait for me for a moment." Si Ping immediately squatted down and helped Yun Chujo clean the swords. The two of them quickly finished cleaning the remaining swords. A trace of doubt flashed in Si Ping's eyes. This Yun Chujo did not look guilty at all. Could it be that he had glued the swords too tightly? She did not break them? However, that did not matter. When the other senior brothers inspected them later, they would naturally discover the clues. When Yun Chujo and Si Ping left the warehouse, two disciples immediately entered the warehouse to check. They only took a glance and saw that all the swords had been cleaned very cleanly. They immediately said to Elder Duanmu, "Elder, Yun Chujo has done her duty. The swords have been cleaned very cleanly." Elder Duanmu nodded and was about to let Yun Chujo leave, but Si Ping said unintentionally, "Elder, your thousand-cleaving sword has been in the warehouse for a long time. Why don't you take it out and let us see it?" Elder Duamus' originally cold expression immediately eased up a lot. He smiled slightly and said, "Take it out. If the nourishment is almost done, I can let that old thing Dongfang Chung see it for himself." Elder Duanmu spoke up to this point and glanced at Yun Chujo. Yun Chujo was dumbfounded. Why was she looking at her? What did he want to show off to Elder Dongfang have to do with her? Chapter 40-29. The Thousand Cleaver Sword is missing. How could this fellow know that ever since Elder Dongfang and Yun Chujo returned from the Raging Flame Mountain Range, he often went to Elder Duanmu to brag about how outstanding Yun Chujo was, and how she had a bright future ahead of her, and how she treated him with great respect and so on. Elder Duanmu was not a fool. When he saw Elder Dongfang's expression, he knew that Yun Chujo must have secretly given him the earth fire of the King Fire Spirit Beast. He could not help but feel a little envious and jealous. Therefore, when he heard Si Ping say that he would take out the thousand chopping sword, he gave Yun Chujo a meaningful look. It was just to prove that he was much stronger than Elder Dongfang. It proved that Yun Chujo was blind to actually curry favor with that old geezer Elder Dongfang. Yun Chujo naturally did not know about Elder Duamus' complicated thoughts. She stood at the side calmly and waited with a smile. Si Ping sneered in his heart. "You won't be able to laugh in a while." Soon, the disciple in charge of retrieving the sword ran out in a hurry. Elder, the Thousand Cleaver Sword is missing." Elder Duanmu was stunned at first. Then he flew into a rage. "What? You're talking nonsense. How could the Thousand Cleaver Sword disappear without a trace?" As Elder Duanmu spoke, he rushed into the storeroom. But he could not find the thousand-cleaver sword even after rummaging around. Everyone was dumbfounded. Their #1 sword forging hall not only had special guards, but Elder Duamis' residence was in the backyard. Who would have the guts to steal the thousand-cleaving sword? At this moment, Si Ping looked at Yun Chujio in disbelief. Junior sister Yun, don't make a huge mistake because of a moment of greed. Hurry up and hand over the thousand-cleaving sword. I will plead with the elders on your behalf. Yun Chujio looked at Si Ping's performance and could not help but praise him. This Si Ping was really good at acting. If she had not discovered that the so-called thousand executioner sword had been tampered with, she would have really regarded this Si Ping as a good person. She looked at Si Ping in confusion. Senior brother Si, what do you mean by this? Si Ping sighed. Junior sister Yun, at this time are you still going to deny it? You are the only outsider in the sword forging hall, and you have the opportunity to come into contact with the thousand swords. If you didn't steal the thousand swords wouldn't have disappeared without a trace? Yun Chujio widened her eyes. Io, are you trying to extort people? I'm here to do a mission, not to take the blame for others. It's obvious that someone stole the sword and then used tricks to get me to come here to do a mission. They even specially asked me to clean the sword. They are trying to pin the blame on my weak body. Oh right, senior brother C, you coincidentally mentioned that you wanted to see the thousand executioner sword. Isn't that a little too suspicious? Could it be that you're the one who stole it? Si Ping was momentarily stunned by Yun Chujio's words. How did she know all of this? Although it was a little off, it wasn't far from the truth. She was simply inhuman. However, he quickly reacted. He said angrily, Junior sister Yun, I was kind enough to make you repent, but you retaliated. Since that's the case, Elder, get someone to search Junior sister Yun's body. She must have stolen the thousand executioner sword. The veins on Elder Duamis' forehead were popping up. He had hoped to use the thousand executioner sword to make Elder Dongfang admit defeat, but now he had lost it out of the blue. One could imagine how angry he must be. However, he was experienced and felt that what Yun Chujio said was reasonable. All of this was too coincidental. Besides, why would Yun Chujio steal a treasured sword for no reason? Chapter 40:30 Molten Sword Powder. Si Ping had more or less guessed Elder Duamis' thoughts. He rolled his eyes and said, Elder, this Yun Chujio is very close to Elder Dongfang. Perhaps she used such a sinister method to make it impossible for you to compete with Elder Dongfang. Si Ping's words hit Elder Duamis' heart. He immediately looked coldly at Yun Chujio and said, Yun Chujio, you'd better tell the truth. If I find out that you're lying, even the sect leader won't be able to protect you. Yun Chujio also sneered. Elder Duanmu, you've always been the senior that I admire. I didn't expect that you couldn't even see through such a despicable trick. You've really disappointed me. First, I'm not Elder Dongfang's disciple. Why would I take such a big risk to steal a treasure sword? If I had the time, I might as well give him some earth fire from a king-level fire spirit beast. Secondly, I'm not mentally ill. If I did such a stupid thing, wouldn't I be waiting for you to teach me a lesson? Thirdly, did I take the initiative to come here to do a mission? Did I take the initiative to wipe the sword? Obviously, all of this was planned. If you want to find the thousand-cleaver sword, why don't you capture the person that the bounty hall arranged for me to do a mission and interrogate him? Of course, if someone intentionally suggested that you let me come over to clean the sword, there's a high chance that I was involved. Of course, in order to prove my innocence, I'm willing to accept a body search. Here, this is my storage ring, feel free to search. As Yun Chujio spoke, she took off the storage ring on her hand and handed it to Elder Duanmu. Elder Duanmu didn't know whether to search or not. He had to admit that what Yun Chujio said made sense. She really didn't need to take the risk to steal the thousand-cleaver sword. He recalled what had happened that morning. When he heard that Yun Chujio had been sent to pound the sword, he had casually said that it was nonsense. Si Ping had suggested that Yun Chujio go to the backyard to clean the sword. Could it be that Si Ping had planned all of this? Elder Duamis' gaze fell on Si Ping. Although Si Ping was very nervous, he still pretended to be calm. After all, he had not stolen the thousand-cleaver sword. Even if Elder Duanmu suspected, he would not be able to convict him. Therefore, He smiled bitterly and said, "Elder, I have suffered an undeserved disaster. Please search me too." Yun Chujo immediately sneered and said, "Who knows which master you have given the thousand-slaying sword to? Elder Duanmu will naturally not be able to find anything. Elder Duanmu, think about whether Si Ping has done anything strange recently. Maybe you will find some clues." Si Ping was so angry that he gritted his teeth. He really didn't expect Yun Chujo to be so sharp-tongued. Every word pierced into his heart, making him unable to refute. A disciple behind Elder Duanmu said hesitantly, "Elder, I have something to report." "Speak." Elder Duanmu said coldly. "Elder, 2 nights ago, I was supposed to guard the weapon refining furnace, but senior brother C took the initiative to ask me to guard it. I was lazy and agreed. However, the next day, I found this at the edge of the furnace. At that time I didn't take it seriously, but now it seems a little strange." As the disciple spoke, he took out a small paper bag from his storage ring. There were a few tiny black objects inside. Elder Duamus' eyes suddenly flashed with a cold light. He recognized those tiny black objects. They were molten sword powder. As the name implied, molten sword powder could speed up the melting speed of a treasured sword. In addition, if one wanted to cut a treasured sword easily, one only needed to heat the treasured sword and sprinkle it with molten sword powder. Then the treasured sword would be cut in half. Chapter 4031, Trying to Trick Her? Dream on. Elder Duanmu looked coldly at Si Ping. He had once told his disciples that although the molten sword powder had a quick effect, it would damage the quality of the forged sword and forbid anyone from using it. Now that Si Ping had secretly used the molten sword powder, it was obvious that he had ulterior motives. When he thought of what Yun Chujo said about the master behind the scenes, he could not help but feel a chill down his spine. Could it be that Si Ping was a spy from another faction? Take him down and call the discipline hall to interrogate him. Elder Duanmu shouted sternly. Si Ping had never dreamed that things would suddenly turn out like this. After his usual observation, he felt that Elder Duanmu hated Yun Chujo very much. Logically, he should have suspected Yun Chujo more. Why was he convicted just based on the molten sword powder now? Si Ping gritted his teeth. Now he could only avoid the worst. He knelt on the ground and cried, "Elder, I'm wronged, I'm wronged. I admit that I secretly tried to use the molten sword powder to forge the sword, but it was only out of curiosity. I really didn't steal the 1,000-cleaver sword." Before Elder Duanmu could say anything, Yun Chujo said from the side, "Tiske, that sounds nice. Maybe you melted Elder Duamus' 1,000-cleaver sword. How vicious. Don't you know that Elder Duanmu loves swords like his life? You're trying to take Elder Duamus' life. You shameless bastard, you even tried to frame me." Fortunately, Elder Duanmu is very observant. Otherwise, I would have been ruined by you. Elder Duanmu almost spat out a mouthful of blood when he recalled that the 1,000-cleaver sword that he had spent so much effort to forge had actually been melted into molten iron. He immediately waved his hand and said, "Take it away and tell the discipline hall to use all means to make him tell the truth." Si Ping's head buzzed. Use all means? He was afraid that his life would be worse than death. Although he was still wailing, he was still taken away by 2 disciples. Yun Chujo felt that she should retire after her success, so she said with a smile, "Well, Elder Duanmu, I'm sorry for your loss. I'll take my leave first." Elder Duanmu glared at her and warned, "You'd better not play any tricks. If I find out that you're involved in this, I won't forgive you." Yun Chujo looked wronged and said, "Elder Duanmu, I'm already suffering from this undeserved disaster, and you're still trying to scare me. It's so disappointing." After saying that, she covered her face and ran away. Her shivering little back made people feel extremely miserable. Elder Duanmu snorted in embarrassment and looked at the disciple who reported Si Ping before. "Since you've made up for your mistakes, I won't pursue your dereliction of duty. Take care of yourself." The disciple immediately agreed with tears of gratitude, and then heaved a sigh of relief. He had been hesitant to report Si Ping, but seeing Yun Chujia's calm expression, he felt that Si Ping would definitely suffer. He might as well take this opportunity to report Si Ping so that he would not be implicated in the future. Now it seemed that he had made the right bet. Even if he did not report Si Ping, Elder Duanmu might have suspected Si Ping. Coupled with Yun Chujia's encouragement, Si Ping would be in trouble sooner or later. On the other side, He Xinzhou covered her face and left the sword forging hall. After running for a while, she loosened her grip and curled her lips. Was she trying to trick her? In her dreams, the 1,000 slaying swords that had been broken into two had long been thrown into the great void mystic realm by this fellow. Even if Elder Duanmu really wanted to search him, he would not be able to find him. As for the master behind Si Ping, it was most likely Elder Wan. Of course, it could also be Tower Master Luochen. However, this had nothing to do with her. Perhaps Si Ping would soon be silenced. He deserved it. Chapter 4032 was a disguised gift as expected. The next day, Yun Chuzhou heard the news that Si Ping had committed suicide in the discipline hall. Yun Chuzhou curled the corners of her lips. It seemed that the other party was quite afraid of Elder Duanmu, and was afraid that he would be found out. In that case, she had to win Elder Duanmu over. At the critical moment, if he and Elder Dongfang worked together, they could save her little life. Therefore, He Xinzhou hopped to the number 1 sword forging hall of the upper house. The 2 disciples who were guarding the door were still looking at her arrogantly. Didn't you finish your mission yesterday? Why are you here again? Is this where you should be? Leave now or don't blame us for being rude. Yun Chuzhou ignored them and shouted while stretching her neck, Elder Duanmu, Elder Duanmu. The 2 gatekeeping disciples wished they could shut her mouth. If they disturbed Elder Duanmu while he was forging his sword, they might be angry. Therefore, the 2 of them came over to drive Yun Chuzhou away in a huff. However, Yun Chuzhou had just been driven away for some distance. When they were not paying attention, she would jump back and continue to stretch her neck and shout, Elder Duanmu, Elder Duanmu. Elder Duanmu was not deaf. After a few times, he walked out of the courtyard with a solemn expression. Yun Chuzhou, why are you shouting here? Yun Chuzhou immediately came over and said mysteriously, Elder Duanmu, I have a few questions regarding the king-level fire essence beast. May I have a word with you? Come in with me. If Yun Chuzhou said something else, Elder Duanmu would definitely ignore her. However, when he heard that it was about the king-level fire essence beast, his interest was immediately piqued. Therefore, Yun Chuzhou followed Elder Duanmu into the sword forging hall with a smile. The 2 guards who were guarding the door felt as if their hearts were going to explode. After a while, they finally let Yun Chuzhou in. What did they want? Elder Duanmu led Yun Chuzhou to the backyard and asked with a gloomy expression, What question do you want to ask? It was not Elder Duanmu's fault for not looking good. The main reason was that he had just learned that Si Ping had committed suicide this morning. Of course, he knew that it was not as simple as committing suicide, but he did not have any other clues. It was like a fishbone stuck in his throat. Yun Chuzhou took out a foil bucket from her storage ring and placed it on the ground. Elder Duanmu, the quality of the earth fire essence beast that I collected this time is not very stable. If you have time, please help me see what is going on. My stomach suddenly hurts a little. Please do your work first. I'll come and ask for your advice another day. After Yun Chuzhou sent him off, she didn't wait for Elder Duanmu to react. She clutched her stomach and slipped out of the back door. Elder Duanmu took a while to recover before he realized that this little girl had come to deliver a gift in disguise. Elder Duanmu snorted coldly. It wasn't too late for her to realize that he was much stronger than that old bastard Dongfang Cheng. With this conclusion, Elder Duanmu's originally gloomy expression became a little better. This was because he could predict that in the future, he would be able to obtain an additional portion of the king-level fire essence beast's earth fire every month. This way he could forge a high-quality sword. After Yun Chuzhou left the number 1 sword forging hall, she ran to the number 2 sword forging hall to get in touch with Elder Dongfang. After that, she strolled to the sword pool. Manager Li had already heard what happened from Li Zhuangji. Although he didn't want to get too close to Yun Chuzhou because of Elder Wan, he didn't stop Yun Chuzhou from approaching the sword pool. Chapter 4033 The reason why the drifters disappeared. Yun Chuzhou strolled to the edge of the sword pool. During this period of time, the entire sect had been helping the sword forging hall forge swords, so the number of swords in the sword pool had increased quite a bit. although it couldn't be compared to before. At least it didn't look so shabby anymore. Yoon Chujio could vaguely see a corner of the 3 puppet discs in the middle of the layers of swords. She was furious. Although the drifters had saved her, they were too stubborn. Were they planning to take over the 3 puppet discs completely? There weren't many drifters in the sword pool. Most of them had probably gone to her courtyard to wreak havoc. The drifters who were guarding the sword pool saw Yoon Chujio coming over and drifting in the sword pool. Even though they didn't say anything, Yoon Chujio could feel that they were provoking her. Yoon Chujio gritted her teeth and thought to herself, just you wait. Sooner or later, I will teach you guys a lesson. When Yoon Chujio left the sword pool and returned to the courtyard, she indeed saw the drifters playing on the swings in the courtyard. Yoon Chujio ignored them and went straight into the house. Unexpectedly at night, Buttface ran in and shouted, little fairy, those drifters suddenly disappeared again. Yoon Chujio frowned and went to the courtyard. Sure enough, the courtyard was empty. The drifters who couldn't be chased away every day had disappeared. Where did they go? While Yoon Chujio was thinking, Buttface muttered, I remember that the last time the drifters disappeared, there was a full moon in the sky. Tonight it's still a full moon. The days when these drifters disappeared are quite fixed. The speaker didn't mean it, but the listener did. Yoon Chujio's heart stirred. A full moon? That's right. The last time the drifters disappeared was on a full moon. Could there be something to this? A full moon? It seemed that many things only happened on a full moon. For example, the sword shadow on the cliff at the Yoon family's ancestral mausoleum. Yoon Chujio's eyes suddenly lit up. Could the disappearance of these drifters have something to do with the sword shadow on the cliff? The sword shadows on the cliff walls would only appear on a full moon night, and these drifters would also disappear on a full moon night. She then thought of the human figures she had vaguely seen practicing the 7-star sword formation. Could it be that the human figures on the cliff walls were actually the incarnations of these drifters? If this deduction was true, then the nameless ancestral master probably did not build the sword pool back then just to let his disciples cultivate. He probably built it to conceal the killing intent. Furthermore, the nameless patriarch's cave abode was probably built to learn sword techniques on the one hand, and to conceal the existence of the killing aura on the other. This nameless patriarch was really good at scheming. Then where did the killing aura come from? She could not figure out this question no matter what. After all, she had too little information, and she could not guarantee that the figures on the cliff were really those drifters. She had to think of a way to verify it. Therefore, the next day when those drifters appeared in her courtyard again, Yoon Chujio began to practice her sword. However, as she practiced her sword, she provoked the drifters. Hey, although you drifters know the 7-star sword formation, do you know this sword technique of mine? To tell you the truth, this sword technique of mine was learned from a mysterious place. It's not that I look down on you guys, but you guys float around all day and don't even have hands or feet. What the hell do you know? Yoon Chujio's words clearly made the floating people choke with anger. Balls of red mist began to gather. Chapter 4034 was indeed them. Yoon Chujio was still chattering non-stop, but her eyes were flashing with excitement. Oh my, there's a door. Finally, the red mist gathered to form a blurry figure. To be precise, it was not a person. At most it was a blurry figure. Even the swords in their hands were formed from the red mist. Yoon Chujio was very sure that this was the figure that appeared on the cliff, because the figure was the same. Just as Yoon Chujio was thinking, the red figure stabbed at her. Yoon Chujio was so scared that she quickly used the sword in her hand to block it. However, she forgot that the sword in the red figure's hand was the aura of slaughter. How could she be afraid of her treasured sword? Therefore, she could only use all her strength to dodge to the side. Before she could let out a sigh of relief, the second sword of the red figure stabbed at her again. The speed was so fast that it was suffocating. Yoon Chujio did not dare to be careless anymore. Although these drifters had saved her, they still did not give up on finding a chance to enter the space between her eyebrows. She had to be careful. Fortunately, the red figure had a playful intention. It seemed to like seeing Yoon Chujio dodge in a sorry state. It could have stabbed Yoon Chujio, but it gave her a chance to dodge. Yoon Chujio originally thought that her swordsmanship was not bad. After all, she spent all her time on swordsmanship when she was not practicing. however, compared to the red figure that the drifter had turned into. It was like the difference between a chicken and an eagle. They were not on the same level. Moreover, she did not know if it was because of the limitation of her spiritual power. She clearly knew how to break the red figure's swordsmanship, but she could not use it in time. Yun Chujio was forced into a sorry state by the red figure. Her body was soaked in sweat. If it were not for the Piaos deliberately toying with her, she would have died hundreds of times. However, Yun Chujio was able to hold on. Even though she was exhausted and her hand holding the sword was trembling, she still did not give up. The Piaos were very excited. In their limited consciousness, no one had played with them for a long time. It was still this little girl who forbade them from playing. Unlike some of the trash they found in the past, who were either scared to death or knelt down and cried, it was so boring. Finally, Yun Chujio could not hold on any longer and collapsed on the ground. Even so, she did not forget to take out the relic and place it in front of her to prevent the drifters from taking advantage of it. The red figure was dancing not far away from her. It was obviously mocking her for overestimating herself. If it could make a sound, it would probably laugh until it died. Yun Chujio rolled her eyes. She couldn't be bothered with these idiots. However, she suddenly widened her eyes and pointed at the red figure with a trembling hand. She asked angrily, If your sword techniques are so powerful, why didn't you use this sword technique when I was being chased? Why did you use the 7-star sword formation instead?" The dancing red figure immediately stopped dancing guiltily. Then it turned into wisps of red mist and went to play on the swing without a care in the world. Yun Chujio glanced at them fiercely. She guessed that either these drifters were deliberately making fun of her, or they had some restrictions after leaving the nameless sword sect. They could only rely on the puppet disc. Yun Chujio thought of the figure on the cliff and thought of the worryless fish. Ever since she brought them into the great void mystic realm, she had not thought of eating them. It was such a pity. Hence, she secretly asked the ball of wool to make a few of them and stewed them in an alchemy furnace. Chapter 40-35 Eye of Sword Intent. While Fujio was enjoying her meal, the sound of footsteps came from outside. This fellow quickly put the alchemy furnace into his storage ring, and then took out a handkerchief to wipe his mouth. Yun Chujio looked at those drifters again and saw that those drifters had long slipped into the house. Yun Chujio cursed in her heart. Damn it, they actually reacted faster than her. They must have done a lot of bad things. There seemed to be something wrong with these words. Just as this guy was thinking about it, Li Zhuangzi's voice came from outside the door. "Junior sister Yun, I brought you a spiritual fruit." Yun Chujio thought to herself that it was really not a good time to come. She quickly sent him away to continue eating the fish. Therefore, Yun Chujio walked to the gate of the courtyard. After opening the gate, she took the spiritual fruit from Li Zhuangzi's hand and said, "Senior brother Li, if there's nothing else, you can go back. It's late. I want to sleep." Li Zhuangzi looked at the high sun hanging in the sky. The corner of his eyes twitched and then he sniffed. Junior sister Yun, what are you eating? Why does it smell so good?" Yun Chujio said casually, "Isn't it the seafood we bought in the Lost Sea? What else can be delicious?" Li Zhuangzi frowned. "That's not right. This is not the taste of the seafood. The taste is somewhat familiar." It seems. Li Zhuangzi suddenly widened his eyes and looked at Yun Chujio in disbelief. He lowered his voice and said, "It's worryless fish. This is the smell of worryless fish. Elder One once rewarded my father with one. This is the smell." Yun Chujio naturally would not admit it. She curled her lips and said, "What worryless fish? There are worryless fish. You've smelled it wrong. It's nothing. Hurry up and leave. I'm going to sleep." Li Zhuangzi was a person who liked to eat, drink, and have fun. How could he leave so easily? He immediately said obsequiously, "Junior sister Yun, although we had some misunderstandings in the past, it's all because of my scoundrel senior brother. We can be considered to have experienced life and death. If you don't share the good food with senior brother, it would be too unkind." Yun Chujio clenched her teeth in anger. In the past, she thought that this Li Zhuangzi was an idiot. She did not expect him to be a foodie. However, she knew that she couldn't chase him away, so she could only close the door and take out the alchemy furnace from her storage ring. Li Zhuangzi's eyes lit up when he saw the carefree fish in the alchemy furnace. He didn't need Yun Chuzhou to let him go. He took out a bowl and chopsticks from his storage ring and started eating. Yun Chuzhou was furious. It turned out that he was shameless. She was afraid that Li Zhuangzi would eat all of it, so she quickly picked up her chopsticks as well. Not long after, even the fish soup was finished by the two of them. Only then did Li Zhuangzi realize that Yun Chuzhou actually used the alchemy furnace to stew the fish. Junior sister Yun, where did you get the worryless fish? Didn't you say that our sex worryless fish is almost extinct? Li Zhuangzi asked curiously. I picked it up, Yun Chuzhou said shamelessly. Li Zhuangzi naturally didn't believe her. But fortunately he was tactful. Seeing that Yun Chuzhou wasn't willing to say more, he didn't ask further. However, he made up his mind that he would have a good relationship with Yun Chuzhou in the future. The two of them chatted. Li Zhuangzi sighed and said, "Sigh, junior sister Yun, you may not know this, but the Eye of Sword Intent will open in half a month. Unfortunately, this has nothing to do with us." Yun Chuzhou asked in confusion, "What is the Eye of Sword Intent?" The Eye of Sword Intent? There are eyes in Sword Intent? Li Zhuangzi looked at her speechlessly and explained, "The Eye of Sword Intent is not the Eye of Sword Intent. It is a secret realm that opens once every 100 years. It is the dream opportunity for all sword practitioners." Chapter 40-36. Junior sister Yun went crazy again when Yun Chuzhou heard that it was a secret realm. Her interest immediately waned. She didn't know how many secret realms she had entered, and the result was almost the same every time. It was nothing more than tidying up the weapon spirit inside and making a small fortune. Li Zhuangzi saw that Yun Chuzhou's interest was lacking. He immediately said with some excitement, "Junior sister Yun, don't underestimate this Eye of Sword Intent. It is said that there is a sharp sword deep in the core of the earth in the Eye of Sword Intent. You can feel the majestic sword intent around it. In the Eye of Sword Intent, the probability of one comprehending sword intent is greatly increased. Every time someone comes out from the Eye of Sword Intent, they will be able to comprehend one type of sword intent. Some will even be able to comprehend two types of sword intent. Do you know what this means? Some people will never be able to comprehend sword intent in their entire lives. However, in the Eye of Sword Intent, they will be able to comprehend two types of sword intent at once. What kind of temptation is this?" Hearing his words, Yun Chuzhou became very interested. Up until now, she had only comprehended the sword intent of chaos. If she could comprehend a few more types of sword intent, it would be very beneficial for her to increase her strength. Thus she said lightly, "Since you said it so mysteriously, then I've decided to take a look. How do I sign up?" Li Zhuangzi looked at her speechlessly. "Junior sister Yun, you're thinking too simply. In order to get a spot to go to the Eye of Sword Intent, all the major sects are fighting over it. How can we have a share?" Yun Chuzhou frowned. "No chance at all? What conditions do we need to go?" "The Eye of Sword Intent can only allow about 1,000 people to enter at a time. Because our Nameless Sword Sect is famous for our sword. Our Nameless Sword Sect has 200 spots. If you want to go, you must at least rank in the top 100 on the proclamation of Azure Sky, because the successive disciples and elders still need to occupy about 100 spots. In a few days, the inner sect would have a monthly competition. This time, the competition for the top 100 would definitely be very fierce. However, this had nothing to do with us. After all, our ranking is too low." Li Zhuangzi's tone was filled with envy and jealousy as he spoke towards the end. However, there was no other way. Although his ranking was higher than Yun Chuzhou's, it was still beyond the top 1,000. Wanting to fight for the top 100 was practically a fool's dream. Yun Chuzhou narrowed her eyes. She was definitely going to go to the Eye of Sword Intent. Wasn't it just the top 100? There was still hope if she thought of some derogatory moves. She looked at Li Zhuangzi with a faint smile. "Do you want to go to the Eye of Sword Intent?" Li Zhuangzi rolled his eyes. Was there a need to ask? All sword practitioners naturally wanted to go to the Eye of Sword Intent. The main thing was that he could not go. Yun Chuzhou smiled sinisterly. As long as you do as I say, not only you, but Chen Bufan and the others can also go to the Eye of Sword Intent. Li Zhuangji looked at Yun Chuzhou speechlessly. It was over. Junior sister Yun had gone crazy again. Chen Bufan and the others were worse than him. Go to hell. Yun Chuzhou blinked her eyes. Send a message to them and call them over. Although Li Zhuangji thought that Yun Chuzhou was talking nonsense, he didn't dare to disobey her. He immediately called Chen Bufan, Zhao Hui, and the others over. Yun Chuzhou coughed and said, "So do you want to go to the Eye of Sword Intent? If you want to go, then listen to me. I guarantee that you will all be qualified to go to the Eye of Sword Intent." Chen Bufan and the others widened their eyes. The first thought that flashed through their minds was the same as Li Zhuangzi's. Junior sister Yun, she had gone crazy again. Chapter 4037, Big Dipper Battle Team. Chen Bufan coughed dryly and said, Junior sister Yun, have you been feeling unwell for the past few days? It's better for you to rest early. We'll be going back now. Zhao Hui said from the side, "Yes, junior sister Yun, you should rest well. We won't disturb you anymore." Yun Chuzhou snorted coldly and said, "I'll only give you one chance. If you don't go, I'll find someone else. Anyway, there are plenty of inner sect disciples who want to go to the Eye of Sword Intent." Yun Chuzhou sat on the stone bench with a nonchalant look on her face. Li Zhuangji and the others looked at each other and thought about what had happened on the Blood Sand Island. Junior sister Yun had even destroyed the blood tree. Perhaps she could really get them into the top 100? Chen Bufan's chubby face suddenly smiled like a flower. "Junior sister Yun, we are just joking with you. Do you have any way to get us into the top 100? Yun Chuzhou looked at the other people. They were all fawning. If they could get the opportunity to enter the Eye of Sword Intent, they would be willing to work as hard as they could. Yun Chuzhou lowered her voice and muttered to herself. Chen Bufan and the others' faces were stiff. Wasn't this a lie? Could this work? Wasn't this asking for a beating? However, in the end, they couldn't resist the temptation of the Eye of Sword Intent and accepted Yun Chuzhou's method with a bitter face. 3 days later, the monthly inner disciple competition began. As Li Zhuangji had expected, this time, there were several additional competition stages specially set up to facilitate the fierce competition for the top 100. The competition had a total of 3 days. 2 days ago, Yun Chuzhou, Zhao Hui, and the others didn't show up. Instead, they continued to stay in Yun Chuzhou's courtyard. On the last day of the competition on the various competition platforms became even more intense. The competition for the top 100 had reached a climax. Among the crowd watching the competition, Li Zhuangji and the others looked at each other bitterly. They struggled for a long time before they raised the banners in their hands. Soon, someone saw the banners they were holding. Someone read, "The Big Dipper Battle Team is invincible. We will crush the top 100 to pieces." Everyone was confused. What did that mean? Chen Bufan gulped. He braced himself and said, "Humph. You may not know this, but even though the 7 of us are not ranked very well, after we formed the Big Dipper Battle Team, our strength has greatly increased. Any team of 7 people in the top 100 would not be our match. If any of our fellow disciples in the top 100 don't believe us, they can form a battle team for us to challenge. If our Big Dipper Battle Team loses, we are willing to give the opponent 7 million high-grade spirit stones." Although Chen Bufan's words were loud and clear, in fact, his heart was filled with uncertainty. Could this work? Putting aside whether or not anyone would agree to form a battle team and challenge them, even if someone did agree, they would still lose. 7 million. That black-hearted junior sister Yun asked them to put their handprints on the new loan slip again, That's not right, they haven't lost yet, why did they give her the loan slip first? Fuck, they got scammed again. Just as Chen Bufan was in a daze, the crowd exploded. Haha. This is hilarious. Are these people here to make a joke? Just them? The highest rank Li Zhuangji is only in the top 1,250, and he wants to challenge the top 100 disciples? I don't think they are here to make a joke. They must be out of their minds. Aren't they here to give people spirit stones? It's a pity that I'm ranked in the 500th place. Otherwise, I would definitely find a few fellow disciples with good relationships to form a battle team to deal with them. This is no different from picking up money. Chapter 4038 Poached Egg Battle Team. When Chun Bufan and the others heard the crowd's discussion, they wished they could find a hole to hide in. However, when they thought about what Yun Chujo said, they could only pretend to be invincible. Li Zhuangji stared at them and said, "Stop talking nonsense. If you're not in the top 100, then step aside. Only the top 100 have the qualifications to compete with our Big Dipper battle team." The crowd was angered by Li Zhuangzi's shameless words until they gritted their teeth and cursed one after another. "Li Zhuangji, go ahead and be arrogant. I see that ever since your relationship with Yun Chujo eased up, your brain has become abnormal." "That's right. Previously, you were bullied to such an extent by Yun Chujo. Now, you actually got mixed up with Yun Chujo. You're really heartless." Top 100? Tui. With how they are, they can be dealt with by any group of 7. They can just wait to embarrass themselves. However, most of the disciples ranked in the top 100 laughed it off. If it was a normal month, they could play with these 7 idiots. However, this time the top 100 was related to the qualifications of the Eye of Sword Intent. It was better to avoid unnecessary complications. However, some people were tempted. This was a good opportunity to earn money. These 7 trash could be easily taken care of. A total of 7 million. Everyone would be able to get 1 million if they got their hands on it. Where would they find such a good thing that fell from the sky? Hence, a few inner sect disciples who were ranked within the top 100 hit it off. They immediately gathered 7 people and even came up with the name of the Sun Battle Team. Obviously, this name also surpassed the Big Dipper Battle Team. How could a mere Big Dipper star be compared to the radiance of the sun? The leader of the Sun Battle Team, a disciple called Liao Tao, walked in front of Li Zhuangji and said, "Do you mean what you said? If you lose, you will give us 7 million spirit stones?" "Of course. However, if we win, our ranking will have to be switched with yours. After all, we have invested a lot in order to get the spot for the Eye of Sword Intent." Li Zhuangji curled his lips and said. Liao Tao looked at him contemptuously. "Of course. This is the rule of the competition stage. Since both of us have no objections, let's register with the manager." Li Zhuangji pretended to be calm and nodded. However, he looked around and did not find any trace of Yun Chujo. He was anxious. Why wasn't this ancestor here yet? Just as he was anxious, he saw Yun Chujo come. However, this fellow did not come by himself. Instead, he came with Elder Duanmu and Elder Dongfang. Yun Chujo said to the two of them in a lackey manner, "Elders, the competition is about to begin. You two just wait and see." Elder Duanmu snorted coldly. "Yun Chujo, I'll give you one last piece of advice. Don't overestimate yourself." Elder Dongfang's words were more tactful. "Little girl, if you really want to go to the Eye of Sword Intent, we can think of another way. It's better if you don't go on stage." Yun Chujo said with a smile, "Thank you for your kind intentions, elders. Since I've already said it, I naturally can't go back on my words. I only hope that you two elders can help me be a witness so that our Big Dipper battle team doesn't lose and the Fried Egg battle team on the other side won't admit defeat." Fried egg. The corners of Elder Duanmu and Elder Dongfang's eyes twitched. She was originally from the Sun battle team, alright? But when she said that she was from the Fried Egg battle team, this little girl's mouth was really vicious. Chapter 4039. Who will make the first move? After Yun Chujo finished speaking, she hopped to the side of the competition stage to go through the registration procedures. This guy was very thorough. If they won, the other side would not admit their defeat. In addition to the encouragement of others, wouldn't she be wasting her efforts? Therefore, early in the morning, she had persuaded the 2 big Buddhas to come. This way, she was not afraid that someone would go back on their words. The manager in charge of registration was also dumbfounded. Although there wasn't a clause in the rules that forbade the formation of teams, this was really the first time he had encountered such a situation. He was caught off guard for a moment. Putting everything else aside, this competition stage had to be rebuilt. After all, how could 2 people be the same as 14 people? Therefore, the manager immediately arranged for the odd job workers to merge the few competition stages. Fortunately, it was already the last day, and the competition was basically about to begin. The bet in the southeast corner was even more heated. Of course, 99% of the people were betting on Team Sun to win, and only a few people were betting on the Big Dipper battle team. Right at this moment, Yun Chujo swaggered over and directly threw out 5 million high-grade spirit stones to bet on the Big Dipper battle team to win. The group of people looked at Yun Chujo as if they were looking at a fool. This Yun Chujia's brain was really sick. She had spent 12 million upper-grade spirit stones in one go. She really had money to burn. After Yun Chujo placed her bet, the competition stage was also completed. The newly made competition stage was filled with disciples who were watching the show. Of course, Elder Dongfang and Elder Duanmu naturally wouldn't squeeze in the crowd. Instead, they were invited by the steward to sit in the judges' area on the competition stage. The steward was just about to ring the bronze bell to signal the start of the competition when he realized that there was one person missing. Li Zhuangji and the other three looked speechlessly at Yun Chujo, who was strolling around not far away from the competition stage. They thought to themselves, what time is it now? Hurry up and get on the stage. Finally, when Yun Chujo slowly got onto the competition stage, the steward rang the bronze bell to signal that the competition could begin. The 7 members of Team Sun looked at Yun Chujo and the others with disdain. They thought to themselves that these little trash could probably be dealt with in 15 minutes. Liao Tao said with contempt, I advise you to just admit defeat. Otherwise, don't blame us for not being polite. After all, this sword has no eyes. If we hurt you, it will hurt the harmony. The corner of Yun Chujia's mouth curled up. TSK, let's not talk about anything else. Your team's name is too outdated. What poached egg team? If you don't lose, it will be absolutely unacceptable. Poached egg? Liao Tao's face stiffened. We are the Sun team, not some poached egg team. Let's cut the crap and do it. On account of your low spiritual power, I'll let you guys do it first. Yun Chujo curled her lips. Do we still need you to let us do it? You guys do it first. After all, you guys are a bunch of useless names. I reckon your spiritual power isn't that great. When Liao Tao heard Yun Chujia's words, he snorted coldly and said, You really overestimate yourselves. Since you guys are asking for humiliation, then don't blame us for being impolite. Brothers, let's go. The few disciples behind Liao Tao were just about to show their arms and roll up their sleeves to start a fight when Yun Chujo raised her hand. Wait a moment. I think what you said just now makes sense. It's better for us to make our move first. When Liao Tao and the others heard that, they could not be more contemptuous. This Yun Chujo was just a show-off. Now, wasn't she admitting defeat? Therefore, he signaled the others to let Yun Chujo and the others make the first move. After all, their spiritual power was much higher than Yun Chujo and the others. They would definitely win anyway, so they might as well earn a good reputation. Chapter 40 Transformation Formation. Yun Chujo waved her hand, and Zhao Hui and the others all charged towards Liao Tao. It was obvious that they intended to gather all their strength and heavily injure one of them first. Although Liao Tao's spiritual power was higher than any of Yun Chujo and the others, and it was not just a little bit higher no matter how powerful he was still not a match for Yun Chujo and the others. Liao Tao was clearly caught off guard, and his companions did not expect such a scene. For a moment they were a little confused. By the time they reacted, Liao Tao was already wounded, and his injuries were not light. He had basically lost his combat ability. The disciples watching from below the stage were all dumbstruck. How could he play with them like this? One was crippled just like that? Liao Tao swallowed a few pills. He was angry and in pain. He almost fainted. He said to his other companions, Go. This is outrageous. Yun Chujo took advantage of the time when the others were fighting to kick Liao Tao, who was shouting in anger, to the bottom of the stage. This time it was much quieter. When the remaining 6 members of Team Sun saw this, their attacks became even fiercer. Although they were one person short, they still had enough confidence to defeat Yun Chujia's 7 people. After all, the difference in strength was obvious. In less than half an hour, Yun Chujo and the other 3 were clearly at a disadvantage. Zhao Hui and the others had already been injured to varying degrees. Elder Duanmu shook his head. Although Yun Chuzhou had used her cleverness to gain the upper hand, the difference in strength was still too great. She was afraid that she would be defeated. At this moment, Yun Chuzhou's clear shout was heard. Set up the formation. Immediately, Yun Chuzhou and the other three changed their positions and formed the 7-star sword formation. Elder Dongfang stroked his beard. He scolded jokingly, "That little girl is really smart." She took the initiative and crippled one member of the poached egg battle team. This way, because the poached egg battle team doesn't have enough manpower, they can only fight one-on-one or use the 5-element sword formation, which is much weaker than the 7-star sword formation. This way there will be variables. Elder Duanmu snorted lightly. Even so, I still think highly of the poached egg battle team. The corner of the steward's eyes twitched. The poached egg battle team? Not to mention anything else, just by listening to what they said, he knew that they were speaking for Yun Chuzhou. Yun Chuzhou and the other three had the advantage of the sword formation, so the situation had turned from one-sided to evenly matched. At this moment, Liao Tao had already recovered a little after taking the pill. However, he had already been kicked to the bottom of the stage, so he could not go up again. He was so angry that his face was red and his neck was thick. He shouted at his companions on the stage, "Grit your teeth and hold on. Your spiritual power is much higher than theirs. As time passes, they will naturally reveal their flaws." The vast majority of the surrounding disciples agreed with Liao Tao's words. Although the two sides were tied, as long as Team Sun held on, the Big Dipper battle team would definitely fall into a disadvantageous position in an hour at most. Zhao Hui and the others were very nervous. Although the previous plan had succeeded, the most crucial step was the next step. Would this work? At this moment, Yun Chuzhou made a hand gesture. Change the formation. Change the formation? Regardless of whether it was Team Sun or the spectating disciples, they were all very puzzled. Yun Chuzhou and the others wanted to change the formation? Could it be that they wanted to change the formation into the 5-element sword formation? Wasn't this courting death? They didn't expect that Yun Chuzhou and the others actually turned into the 5-element sword formation, while Yun Chuzhou and Zhao Hui, who were in the direction of Kaiyang and Yaoguang, were abandoned. Chapter 40-41. Just when everyone was confused, Yun Chuzhou and Zhao Hui attacked the lone disciple. When the other disciples of Team Sun wanted to help, they were blocked by Li Zhuangji and the others' 5-element sword formation. Although they were not strong, they could still block for a while. Although the disciple who was alone was panicking, he was not like Liao Tao, who was not prepared. With his own strength, he could hold on until his other companions came to rescue him. Who would have thought that just as he was pondering, he stumbled and was forcefully stabbed by Yun Chuzhou's sword into his right arm. Immediately after, Zhao Hu's sword stabbed into his left leg, and then was kicked by Yun Chuzhou to the bottom of the competition stage. Everyone was dead silent at first, and then with a buzz they exploded. Oh my god! They had really opened their eyes. They could actually do this. It had to be said that the Big Dipper battle team was really full of bad ideas. Now that the situation had completely turned around, the Big Dipper battle team had 2 more people than the Sun battle team. They immediately took the initiative, and their chances of winning were very, very high. Those disciples who had bet on the Big Dipper battle team to win were so happy that they almost went crazy. They were rich. This time they were really rich. In contrast, those who had bet on the Sun battle team to win all had ashen faces. They were so pained that they wished they could go up and help the Sun battle team to turn the tide of the battle. However, to everyone's surprise, the situation on the stage was not one-sided. Instead, it was still evenly matched. Haha, I got it. Although the Big Dipper battle team has 2 more people, their spiritual power is low. As time passes, they won't be able to hold on anymore. Right, what you said makes sense. Think so too. It seems that the final victor is still the Sun battle team. Strength is still the most important. This little trick can only give them a temporary advantage. Elder Duanmu frowned. He had a much sharper eye than those disciples. He could see that Yun Chuzhou and the others did not use their full strength. Instead, they were retracting their attacks. Why was that? Elder Dongfang said in a low voice. This little girl is so smart that she is as intelligent as a demon. Do you know why she is retracting her attacks? Elder Duanmu shook his head in annoyance. He hated Elder Dongfang's mystifying methods the most. If there was something to say, just say it. If there was something to say, just say it. There's still 2 hours before the end of today's competition. She's just stalling for time. Think about it. If they ended the battle now, they would definitely be ranked in the top 100, but that would also make them live targets. The disciples ranked outside the top 100 would frantically look for them to challenge them separately. Moreover, they could not refuse. In that case, wouldn't all their previous efforts be wasted? However, once they ran out of time, the top 100 would be set in stone. This little girl is really too smart, Elder Dongfang praised. With such unparalleled wisdom, even if her spiritual power was low, her future would be boundless. Elder Duanmu's mouth was slightly agape. He had to admit that this little girl was really thoughtful. As for why he and Elder Dongfang both thought that this idea was Yunchujius, there was no other reason. The main reason was, compared to Li Zhuangji and the others, Yunchuzhou had too many dark histories. Finally, there was only 15 minutes left until the end of the competition. Yunchuzhou gestured to Li Zhuangji and the others, and everyone understood and stepped up their attacks. Chapter 40-42. Complete victory. Elder Duanmu frowned again and muttered, although her plan is very good, she only has 15 minutes left. Can she guarantee that she can defeat her opponent? It's better not to make things worse. To be honest, Elder Dongfang was also a little worried. Once the time for the competition was up and the two sides did not complete the competition, it would be considered as a failure in the challenge. Then it would really be a futile effort. The 5 members of Team Sun saw the light of victory. As long as they gritted their teeth and persevered for another 15 minutes, they would win. Not only would they not lose the position of the top 100, but they would also receive an additional 7 million upper-grade spirit stones. At the thought of this, the 5 of them suddenly burst out with fighting spirit and forcefully withstood the attacks of Yunchuzhou and the others. The disciples below the stage were simply boiling with excitement. This match was really fucking good-looking. It was simply full of ups and downs and was extremely exciting. This was especially so for those disciples who had placed their bets. All of them clenched their fists and gritted their teeth, wishing that they could go up and fight for the battle team that they supported. Right at this moment, Yunchuzhou let out a light laugh. Change the formation. Everyone had a dumbfounded expression on their faces. They still wanted to change the formation into the 5-element sword formation? Wasn't this insane? Even the 7-star sword formation couldn't gain the upper hand, but the 5-element sword formation could? However, Yunchuzhou and the others had actually turned into the 5-element sword formation. Yunchuzhou and Zhao Hui had been abandoned once again. Was there something wrong with their brains? Or did they have other plans? At this moment, Yunchuzhou and Zhao Hui moved. They raised their swords and attacked a disciple of the Sun Battle team. That disciple was standing in the direction of the wooden seat. The water seat disciple rushed over to help. However, the Big Dipper battle team took advantage of the moment when the water seat disciple lost his seat to find the weakness of the Sun Battle team, and completely dismantled their 5-element sword formation. Elder Duanmu stood up abruptly. Although he was shocked by Yunchuzhi's intelligence, this time he was truly shocked. Although the 5-element sword array was the lowest level sword array in the Nameless Sword Sect, it was still shocking that it was broken in just one move. Elder Dongfang did not stand up, but the shock in his heart was not any less than Elder Duanmu's. To be able to think of this method to break the array, it was obvious that she had studied the 5-element sword array very thoroughly. Most importantly, she had calculated the enemy's reaction. In other words, this was also a gamble. If the disciples of the water level didn't help the disciples of the wooden level, the disciples of the wooden level wouldn't have done anything. This was because Yunchuzhou and Zhao Hui were simply feigning their attacks. Their goal was to make the disciples of the water level lose their positions. At this moment, the 5 members of Team Sun were completely cut off from each other. Almost instantly, one of the disciples was kicked off the stage. The defeat was like the collapse of a mountain. The remaining 4 disciples had completely lost their fighting spirit. Yunchuzhou and the others did not expend much energy and kicked them off the stage as well. The Big Dipper battle team had won completely. There was a deathly silence below the stage at first. Then there was an explosion of cheers. Of course, the cheers were pitifully few. Basically, it was all from the disciples who had bet on Yun Chuzhou and the others to win. The faces of Liao Tao and the other 7 turned pale. Liao Tao gritted his teeth and said, "This doesn't count. The competition stage has always been a one-on-one fight, so we can only count this as a gamble. At worst, we can just compensate you with 7 million upper-grade spirit stones, but we can't let you guys get into the top 100. The other 6 people also echoed, and now they would rather sacrifice their wealth to protect their positions in the top 100. Some of the disciples who lost money felt indignant, so they also agreed, and for a time it was chaotic. Chapter 40-43 was too shameless. Zhao Hui and the others were still in the ecstasy of victory, but when they saw it, they were instantly dumbfounded. Li Zhuangji gnashed his teeth and said, "Liao Tao, you guys are too shameless. We agreed at that time that as long as we won, our rankings would be swapped. How can you not keep your word?" A trace of guilt flashed across Liao Tao's face. It was fine if it was a normal month, but this month's ranking was related to the Eye of Sword intent, so he couldn't care too much. Thus he immediately said, "I've never said that. I mean, if we lose, it'll give you 7 million upper-grade spirit stones." Li Zhuangji wanted to say more, but he heard Yun Chuzhou say, "Alright, you can transfer the 7 million upper-grade spirit stones to me now." Li Zhuangji and the others were so shocked that their eyeballs almost fell off. "It's over, junior sister Yun has gone crazy again." Liao Tao and the others were so happy that they almost went crazy. Haha, this Yun Chuzhou was indeed a country bumpkin. She definitely didn't know the preciousness of the Eye of Sword intent slot, and actually chose 7 million upper-grade spirit stones. Since that was the case, what was there to hesitate about? Thus, Liao Tao and the others immediately transferred 1 million upper-grade spirit stones to Yun Chuzhou. Elder Duanmu wanted to stop them, but Liao Tao and the others were too fast. He didn't have the time to stop them, and his expression immediately turned ugly. He thought that this little girl had a bright future. But now it was obvious that she was an ignorant money grubber. At this moment, he saw Yun Chuzhou walk to the side of the competition manager with a smile. "Manager Gao, please re-register the ranking information for us. I'm the team leader of the Big Dipper battle team, so I'll replace Liao Tao's 65th place. As for the others, they'll be ranked according to their size. You can register them as you see fit." Manager Gao was completely dumbfounded. Let's not talk about whether they would be ranked according to their size first. The main point was that he had already promised Liao Tao not to change the ranking. "Didn't you already accept 7 million high-grade spirit stones from them?" Liao Tao and the other 3 were also anxious. Liao Tao said exasperatedly, "Yun Chuzhou, you already accepted our spirit stones. Why do you still want to change the ranking? You can't go back on your words." Yun Chuzhou spread her hands and said with a chuckle, "You probably have a bad memory, right? Did I say that I would give up on changing the ranking just because I accepted your spirit stones? You guys want to give us spirit stones, but I'm not stupid, so of course I won't refuse. Are you blaming me?" Liao Tao and the other 3 were almost angered to death by Yun Chuzhou's words. Yun Chuzhou was obviously tricking them. Moreover, she was giving them a taste of their own medicine. It was too fucking infuriating. Too damn shameless. Only then did Li Zhuangji and the others come to their senses. They had been scared out of their wits just now and thought that junior sister Yun had gone crazy again. Liao Tao and the others naturally would not be at a disadvantage. They clamored to put pressure on Manager Gao, hoping that he would not change the ranking information for Yun Chuzhou and the others. At this moment, Elder Duanmu let out a long cough filled with pressure, and the entire venue instantly fell silent. "Since you have entered the competition stage, you have tacitly agreed to the rules of the competition stage. Since you have lost, you have to keep your promise. If you can't even do this, you are not worthy to be a disciple of our nameless sword sect." After Elder Duanmu finished speaking, he flicked his sleeves and left the competition stage. Elder Dongfang smiled and nodded at Yun Chuzhou. Then he also left the competition stage. Manager Gao naturally didn't dare to offend Elder Duanmu. Besides, Liao Tao and the others were unreasonable in the first place, so he quickly helped Yun Chuzhou and the others to register the changes in their rankings. Chapter 4044 turned out to be intentional. When Liao Tao and the others saw that the outcome was set, they immediately became like quails that had lost the battle. Not only did they lose their ranking, but they also lost 1,000,000 upper-grade spirit stones each. They simply did not want to live anymore. Liao Tao looked at the smiling Yun Chuzhou on the stage with resentment. He did not blame himself for going on the stage because of greed. He did not blame himself for being inferior to others, but he blamed Yun Chuzhou for being full of bad ideas. He rolled his eyes, and suddenly his eyes lit up. He said to the surrounding disciples, "Fellow disciples, Yun Chuzhou and the other 7 are now ranked within the top 100. As long as you succeed in your challenge, this good ranking will be yours. This is a once-in-lifetime opportunity. You must not miss it." The other disciples suddenly woke up from their dreams. They immediately rushed to Manager Gao's side, clamoring about their challenger. It was none other than to challenge one of Yun Chuzhou's people. This was a great opportunity to obtain the qualifications to go to the Eye of Sword Intent. If they didn't grasp it, they would be a fool. However, Manager Gao's words instantly turned the heat in their hearts into ice. It was like pulling out a cold blade. This month's competition time has already ended. If you want to challenge, please come early next month, Manager Gao said coldly. The crowd was silent for quite a while because of these words. Finally, someone shouted, "Fuck." No wonder the Big Dipper battle team didn't have the advantage when it was a 7 versus 5 match on the stage. It turns out that they did it on purpose. They're just stalling for time. When this person said this, everyone came to a sudden realization. They all started to curse out loud in anger. On one hand, they were cursing at Yun Chuzhou and the others for being too sarcastic. On the other hand, they were ridiculing Liao Tao and the others for being utterly stupid. They actually didn't even see through Yun Chuzhou's trick, forcefully wasting their chance to challenge again. Liao Tao and the others were so angry that they almost fainted. They were also victims, alright? These idiots actually still blamed them. However, Li Zhuangji, Zhao Hui, and the others were laughing so hard that they couldn't close their mouths. Not only did they obtain the qualifications to use the Eye of Sword Intent, but they also made a huge profit from the bet, not to mention the 7,000,000 spirit stones that junior sister Yun had swindled. Haha, they were rich. However, Yun Chuzhou looked at them lightly and said, "I'll take those spirit stones as repayment. Don't forget that you still owe me money." Li Zhuangji and the others immediately became listless. However, when they thought about the qualifications to use the Eye of Sword Intent, they immediately threw these worldly possessions out of their minds. Compared to the qualifications to use the Eye of Sword Intent, spirit stones were nothing. After Li Zhuangji and the others accompanied Yun Chuzhou to the gambling house to exchange for spirit stones, they chatted and laughed as they walked towards the dining hall. Since they were happy today, they naturally wanted to have a good meal. Liao Tao and the others gritted their teeth as they looked at the backs of Yun Chuzhou and the others. They wished they could pounce on them and take a few bites. However, due to the sect rules, they could only endure it. In their hearts, they decided to wait until the next month's competition to make Yun Chuzhou and the others pay the price. Yun Chuzhou, Li Zhuangji, and the others ate and drank for a while before returning to their dormitories. After returning to their dormitories, Yun Chuzhou said to the drifters who followed closely behind, "I will go to the Eye of Sword Intent the day after tomorrow. You guys will watch over my house obediently, understand?" These few days, when Li Zhuangji and the others were fiddling with the sword array in Yun Chuzhou's courtyard, the drifters were eager to cause trouble. However, when they saw the mountain-like pile of Buddhist scriptures on the stone table, they had no choice but to restrain themselves. They only occasionally allowed Li Zhuangji and the others to fall or something like that, so they did not do anything worse. Now that they heard that Yun Chuzhou was actually going to leave again, the drifters were even more unhappy. Chapter 4045 brought the drifters along. The drifters jumped around randomly for a while, indicating that they were protesting. However, Yun Chuzhou did not fall for their tricks at all and turned around to enter the house. On the morning that Yun Chuzhou left the house as expected, Yun Chujo saw 3 puppet plates on the stone table. Yun Chujo immediately revealed a sinister smile. Drifters, you must be hiding in the puppet plates now. How about I put you in my storage ring and never let you out? Isn't it wonderful? The drifters were so angry that they almost fainted. Wonderful? They were so angry that they almost died. The drifters immediately floated out of the 3 puppet discs, afraid that Yun Chujo would really trap them forever. Yun Chujo curled her lips. Look at your cowardice. I was just scaring you. I'll give you one more chance. If you don't go in, I'll leave. The drifters hesitated for a moment, but they still went into the 3 puppet discs. Yun Chujo put the puppet discs into her storage ring, and wondered why these drifters were so fond of her. Why did they have to follow her out? She felt that it was not bad to bring these drifters along. They might be useful at critical moments. Putting everything else aside, it was not bad to create a 7-star sword formation at critical moments. It was not that she had not thought of teaching Zhao Hui and the others the 7-star sword formation, but to be honest, she still did not have complete trust in them. The origin of the 7-star sword formation could not be explained clearly, so she did not plan to tell them for the time being. However, after returning from the Eye of Sword Intent, she could say that she had comprehended it there. When that time came, she would be able to clear her name. Yun Chujo pondered as she walked to the meeting point. Although it was a rare opportunity to go to the Eye of Sword Intent, the nameless sword sect couldn't be left unguarded. Hence, Master Ouyang brought a few elders to stay behind, and let Elder Duanmu and Elder Wan lead the team. If it was in the past, Master Ouyang would definitely not be at ease to let Elder Duanmu and Elder Wan go together. However, for some reason, Elder Duanmu's relationship with Elder Wan had become estranged recently. Instead, he had more interactions with Elder Dongfang, whom he had never gotten along with before. Master Ouyang also received a report that Yun Chujo had been going to Elder Duanmu's courtyard frequently recently. He had a vague guess in his heart, so he was at ease letting the 2 of them lead the team. Someone had to stay behind to guard the sword forging hall. So Master Ouyang let Elder Dongfang stay in the sect. After everyone had arrived, Master Ouyang said a few words. It was nothing more than to cherish this rare opportunity and not waste Yun. After Master Ouyang finished speaking, Elder Wan and Elder Duanmu each said a few more words. It was nothing more than emphasizing the rules of the way and entering the Eye of Sword Intent. They were not allowed to stir up trouble. Finally, the 3 of them finished speaking. Only then did everyone board the flying spirit tool under Master Ouyang's eager gaze and head to the Eye of Sword Intent. The inner disciples were all arranged in a cabin and gathered together in groups of 2 or 3. Yun Chujo saw Zhongli standing alone at the side, so she went over to greet him. Zhongli had been living in seclusion recently. Other than directly challenging a contestant ranked 50 on the last day of the competition, there was no other news about him. The result of the challenge was naturally without suspense. Although Zhongli had been abandoned for a few years, he was still a successor disciple after all. Not to mention challenging a disciple ranked 50, even a disciple ranked 5th was basically no problem. Chapter 40-46. When Zhongli saw Yun Chujo coming over, he smiled and nodded. Although he had a good impression of Yun Chujo, the age difference was quite big. Unlike Zhao Hui and the others who were always together with Yun Chujo, he had a feeling that the friendship between gentlemen was as light as water. When Yun Chujo and the others were competing, he was also watching from below the stage. He was quite emotional. If he had the scheming mind of this little girl, he would not have fallen to this stage. Although Li Zhuangji and the others did not have a good impression of Zhongli in the past, and they had even ridiculed Zhongli together with others, it was as if they had lost their memories now. They also followed closely behind Yun Chujo and called him Martial Uncle Zhang. It was so affectionate. Wan Pengcheng saw this situation and curled his lips. He said to the few lackeys beside him, "Birds of a feather flock together. People flock together. Trash and trash can always come together." Some people, although they have the right to go to the Eye of Sword Intent, it's a waste to go there. They definitely won't be able to comprehend anything. What a waste of the quota! The few people beside Wan Pengcheng immediately echoed. They all knew about the conflict between Wan Pengcheng and Yun Chuzhou. In addition, Elder Wan was leading the team this time, so they naturally had no scruples. Their words were very harsh. Li Zhuangji and the others' expressions suddenly became a little ugly. Only Yun Chuzhiu's expression remained the same. She said to them lightly, "They are talking about themselves. Why are you all joining in the fun?" Li Zhuangji and the others were stunned and then laughed. Junior sister Yun's words were really sarcastic. She did not even use any dirty words when she cursed. After Wan Pengcheng heard it, he immediately stood up and walked in front of Yun Chuzhou and the others. "Yun Chuzhou, who are you talking about?" Yun Chuzhou laughed lightly. "You want to fight? Fine, come on. I want to see how Elder Wan will protect a grandson like you." Yun Chuzhiu's words caused Li Zhuangji and the others to burst into laughter. Wasn't she just a grandson? There was nothing wrong with her. Wan Pengcheng was so angry that his face turned red. Just as he was about to make a move, he was pulled back by the people beside him. Before coming, Elder Wan and Elder Duanmu had specially emphasized that fighting was not allowed. If there was any violation, they would immediately disqualify him from removing the Eye of Sword Intent. Wan Pengcheng thought of the seriousness of the matter and could only clench his teeth. "Yun Chuzhou, just you wait. We're not done yet." Yun Chuzhou did not even look at him. If Elder Wan did not support such an idiot, she could kill him 10,000 times. In the next few days, Wan Pengcheng and the others did not stop hurling insults at each other. However, every time they were whipped by Yun Chuzhou, they eventually shut up. Zhao Hui lowered his voice and said, "Junior sister Yun, you have offended Wan Pengcheng. I'm afraid that after entering the Eye of Sword Intent, he will cause some trouble." Yun Chuzhou chuckled and said, "Even if there isn't such a thing, do you think Elder Wan will let us off easily? Besides, isn't the Eye of Sword Intent to comprehend sword intent? What else can he do to us?" Zhao Hui thought about it and agreed. It was said that the Eye of Sword Intent had a designated area. The major forces only needed to meditate within their respective areas, so there was nothing to worry about. A few days later, the flying spirit tool landed in a valley. The people from the other major forces, including the 9-storied pavilion, had already arrived. Yun Chuzhou secretly glanced around but did not see Tower Master Luochen. She immediately heaved a sigh of relief. It seemed that the pretty boy had hurt him badly. What the fuck? It would be better if he died directly. Chapter 40-47. I placed your husband on a tree just as Yun Chuzhou was thinking about it. She felt a resentful gaze. She didn't care too much about it. After all, this fellow had offended too many people. She could just glare at him if she wanted to. If she had the ability, she could stare until the seas dried up and the rocks rotted. However, she felt that this resentful gaze seemed to have shot over from another sect. So she turned her head to look and saw a young girl wearing light yellow clothes glaring at her fiercely. Yun Chuzhou was amused. Wasn't this the Xiaoyu from the Flying Flower Island? Back then, in order to humiliate her in front of Tower Master Luochen, this little bitch had specially proposed a sword competition with her. In the end, she relied on the sinking pulp sword to gain the upper hand, but she was struck by Tower Master Luchen's palm and nearly died from anger. When Xiaoyu saw Yun Chuzhou looking at her gaze became even colder. But she never expected that Yun Chuzhou would actually give her a brilliant smile and even wave her claws. If it wasn't for the fact that she had no way of leaving the team, this fellow would even run over to exchange a few words of greetings. Xiaoyu instantly felt her heart become even more stifled. It was as though she had used all her strength to smash her fist onto cotton, causing her to feel an unspeakable grievance. Yun Chuzhou looked at Xiaoyu's fuming expression, and just as she was feeling pleased in her heart, the voice transmission talisman in her storage ring started to tremble. Yun Chuzhou was very puzzled. Who sent her the voice transmission talisman? Could it be Yun Jichen and Prime Minister Sima? It didn't make sense. Currently, the Atlas Empire was developing very smoothly under her remote control. Before she came out, she had specially instructed them not to contact her for the next few days. Could it be that something had happened? Yun Chuzhou took out the voice transmission talisman from her storage ring somewhat apprehensively, But when she discovered that it was sent by Shuewuji, she was even more puzzled. Shuewuji couldn't use the voice transmission talisman where he followed the pretty boy. Could it be that he had returned to the northern continent? After Yun Chujio sent her spiritual sense in, Shuewuji's cheeky voice came from inside. Little sister Jiu, I put your fiancé on a tree 1,000 feet away from you. Remember to get it. Yun Chujio. What did he mean by putting her fiancé on a tree? Why did he sound so strange? Yun Chujio said unhappily, explain it clearly. What exactly is going on? Little sister Jiu, I'm following orders. You can ask that facial paralysis person about the specifics. I still have things to do. See you later. Yun Chujio was so angry that she gritted her teeth, but she couldn't really ignore it. Therefore, she clutched her stomach and moved closer to Elder Duanmu. Io, Elder Duanmu, my stomach hurts. I need to go to the toilet. Elder Duan. More than half of her good impression of Yun Chujio suddenly disappeared. What was wrong with the girl? Cultivators were different from ordinary people. The food they ate contained spiritual qi, and most of it could be absorbed by the body. Even if it wasn't absorbed, as long as they controlled it properly, it wouldn't be solved for a long time. Moreover, since they knew that they were going to use the Eye of Sword intent, many people ate fasting pills in advance. How could a heartless person like her have a bad stomach? Although Elder Duamus' expression was very ugly, he could not stop her from going. He could only harumph coldly and say, hurry back. If you miss the time to enter the Eye of Sword intent, you will regret it. Okay. Yun Chujio hurriedly agreed. She clutched her stomach and dived into the small forest 1,000 feet away. This fellow glanced around with shifty eyes and soon discovered a small silver-white snake coiled on a branch. She finally understood why Shuewuji said that he had placed D biming on the tree. Damn it. How did he turn into a snake again? Was he addicted to shapeshifting? Chapter 40-48 fell to the ground when the small silver snake saw Yun Chujio's dumbfounded look. It couldn't help but close its eyes. Out of sight, out of mind. Yun Chujio was stunned for a moment. Then she picked up the small silver snake's tail, and a certain one pitifully turned upside down. Yun Chujio lowered her voice and said, what's going on? Why did you turn into a snake again? Did you seal it too much again? Or do you think it's good to be a snake? A certain being squeezed out 2 sentences from between his teeth. The Eye of Sword essence has the bones that I need. I can only sneak in by turning into this. Yun Chujio suddenly realized. She had said it before. The pretty boy was the most desperate to save face and suffer. If it was not a last resort, he would not have become like this. However, Yun Chujio was still a little puzzled. That's not right. Why don't you just let me help you find it? You don't have to come here personally. You can't find the exact location of the bone. You can only find it if I come here personally, a certain being said coldly. However, a trace of embarrassment flashed across his vertical pupils. As Yun Chujio was holding the small silver snake upside down, she did not notice the gaze of a certain being. She immediately believed it. However, this fellow shone brightly just by giving him a little sunlight. She immediately shook the small silver snake in her hand and said slyly to Skaiska, little baby, when you recovered your human body, you made me suffer a lot. Now that you have fallen into my hands, do you think I should torture you or torture you? A certain lord gritted his teeth. He knew it would be like this. Little Joe, I can recover my human body at any time. Don't go too far. Hei Shinjo immediately shrank her neck. That's right. This time, her pretty boy turned into a snake as a temporary measure. It was better for her to restrain herself. Therefore, she smiled obsequiously. Prince Charming, I'm just teasing you. The other side is urging me. I'll invite you into the bedroom now. You can rest first. Just as a certain someone was wondering about the bedroom, Hei Shinjo threw him into her sleeve pocket. A certain someone, Yun Chujio returned to the team eagerly. Elder Duanmu glared at her fiercely. Hei Shinjo bared her little white teeth and smiled brightly, which made Elder Duamus' hair stand on end. This little girl was in such a bad mood? Why did she look so happy? Soon it was time to open the Eye of Sword Intent. A barrier that looked like water ripples appeared in the center of the six forces. As the six forces had made an agreement long ago, and there was a corresponding area of influence, it was orderly. There was no competition. Yun Chujio was a little nervous. First of all, she knew that she was a troublemaker, especially since the weapon spirit did not want to see her, and Qi Ling did not want to see her. Second of all, she had a gigolo in her sleeve pocket. She did not know if there would be any problems. Fortunately, when it was her turn, nothing unusual happened. She smoothly followed everyone into the Eye of Sword Intent. As soon as she entered the Eye of Sword Intent, Yun Chujio did not even have time to look around before she fell to the ground, instantly becoming the focus of everyone's attention. If it were an ordinary person, they would definitely be embarrassed and would wish they could find a hole to hide in. However, He Xinjiu had never taken the normal path. Just as Wan Pengcheng and the others wanted to laugh at her, this fellow knelt on the ground and muttered a few words before standing up. Everyone was confused by this fellow. Could it be that she didn't fall just now, but that there was something fishy about it? Chapter 40-49 bounced like a rabbit. Elder Duanmu glanced at Yun Chujio and asked, "What's going on?" Yun Chujio said with a solemn face, "Elder Duanmu, when I entered the Eye of Sword Intent just now, I felt the majestic and ancient power of the Sword Intent, so I couldn't help but kneel down and worship it. It must be the Sword Intent calling me. I'm so honored." Elder Duamus' expression immediately eased up a lot. This little girl seemed to be very sensitive to the Sword Intent. Perhaps there would be good fortune in the Eye of Sword Intent. He nodded slightly at the thought and signaled for everyone to continue walking in. Yun Chujio didn't care about the envious, suspicious, or mocking gazes of the crowd. Instead, she cursed in her heart, "Damn it, which old bastard did this? It can't be the Qi Ling, right?" She squinted her eyes and looked around. Her pupils suddenly constricted because she saw a faint red mist drifting towards her feet. Damn! No wonder she fell down all of a sudden. So it was this thing that did this. Although she did not dare to be very sure, this thing was exactly the same as the drifter in her courtyard. Perhaps it was also filled with killing intent. Moreover, this trick was the same as the drifter's trick to tease Zhao Hui and the others. All the people in the world were related by blood, so they must be drifters too. Just as Yun Chujio was thinking about it, the faint, almost invisible red mist had already blocked her feet. If she walked forward at her normal pace, she would definitely fall again. Yun Chujio blinked her eyes and deliberately stopped moving. Wan Pengcheng, who was standing behind her, immediately said unhappily, "Hurry up and move." The order of the inner sect disciples' movements was arranged according to the ranking of the Proclamation of Azure Sky. Wan Pengcheng was ranked 66th on the Proclamation of Azure Sky, but Yun Chujio had replaced Liao Tao to become 65th, so she was ranked ahead of him. Wan Pengcheng was already very angry because of this, so he naturally wanted to find fault. Yun Chujio blinked her eyes and stood directly behind Wan Pengcheng. "Senior brother Wan, you go ahead." Wan Pengcheng was stunned, but he thought that Yun Chujio was afraid of him. He immediately sneered and then raised his leg to step forward. Bang! Wan Pengcheng really fell like a dog gnawing on mud. Moreover, he was very pleased with himself previously. He held his head high and puffed out his chest, so the fall was especially tragic. Wan Pengcheng did not have Yun Chujio's talent in acting. He was stunned at that moment. He lay on the ground and did not get up for a long time. Instantly, everyone's eyes were focused on him. He climbed up with a red face and a thick neck. He turned his head and roared at Yun Chujio. "Yun Chujio, was it you who played a trick? You're courting death." Yun Chujio shivered and said innocently, "Senior brother Wan, I was kind enough to let you walk in front. How is it a trick? Besides, we are fellow disciples. It's not good to shout and fight, right?" Wan Pengcheng wanted to say more, but Elder Wan glared at him. "Keep quiet. If anyone makes any more noise, just stay here. Don't go any further." Wan Pengcheng could only look at Yun Chujio with resentment and then continue to walk. Yun Chujio curled the corners of her lips and continued to walk. Soon, she found that there was a drifter in front of her trying to trip her. She simply jumped forward and avoided the drifter. The drifter was obviously unwilling to give up and kept creating obstacles for her. Therefore, everyone was stunned to see that Yoon Chujio was not walking properly, but was jumping around like a rabbit. Chapter 40-50. Floating dregs the corners of Zhao Hui, and the other's eyes twitched. Junior sister Yun, have you gone mad again? Elder Duanmu glared at Yoon Chujio fiercely, but Yoon Chujio continued to hop around as if she hadn't seen anything. This fellow's heart was also bitter. She didn't want to hop around like this, but if she didn't hop around, she would fall very unsightly. Okay? The drifter in the Eye of Sword Intent was obviously much more arrogant than the one in her courtyard. There were so many cultivators here, but they still dared to come out and play tricks. They were simply unscrupulous. Yoon Chujio had the intention to take out the relic to scare the drifter away, but the pretty boy had once told her that the relic was very eye-catching, and it was best not to let others see it. So she could only continue to hop around. Because this guy had to be careful of the drifter under his feet, he did not even have the chance to see the scenery. It was only when the team stopped temporarily that she had the chance to look around. With one look, she could not help but be greatly shocked. In the distance there was a huge sword that pierced straight into the ground. Although it was still far away, she could still feel the biting cold air brought by the huge sword. Yoon Chujio's entire mind was shocked by the huge sword. It was not easy for her to withdraw her gaze before she started to look at her surroundings. This place could almost be described as a barren land. Other than the humans who had entered, there were no signs of life. There was not even a breeze. It was as if time had stopped here. Yoon Chujio wanted to ask D-Biming about the bones. However, she realized that although D-Biming had turned into a small silver snake, he was not her spiritual pet. Furthermore, talismans were prohibited here. It was really inconvenient for the two of them to communicate. Yoon Chujio could only temporarily give up the idea of communicating with D-Biming and began to search for those messy drifters. If Yoon Chujio had not seen the murderous aura in the past, she would not have noticed that there were threads of drifters shuttling through the crowd. However, those drifters did not seem to have any bad intentions towards the others. Instead, they seemed to be playing around. Yoon Chujio cursed in her heart when she saw this. It seemed like these shameless drifters were only targeting her. Could it be that she had dug up their ancestral graves in her previous life? Just as Yoon Chujio was cursing in her heart, the team moved forward again. The reason why they stopped just now was because the 6 major forces had once again confirmed their respective areas of influence. Seeing that the huge sword was very close to them, they had to walk for more than half a day before they reached the huge sword. Yoon Chujio couldn't help but look up. She felt that the giant sword seemed to go straight to the clouds. If she didn't know that it was a treasure sword, people would really think that it was a mountain that towered into the clouds. For a time, everyone was intimidated by the giant sword. Even the cultivators who had been here before were shocked again. Finally, the elders leading the teams from the major forces came back to their senses and ordered everyone to sit cross-legged and meditate according to the order. They had to seize the time to comprehend the sword intent. Everyone knew that this was an opportunity that could not be missed. Hence, they all began to meditate devoutly. They calmed their hearts and focused their minds. They felt the sharp aura on the giant sword and hoped that they could comprehend it. As there were elders and successive disciples in front of them, Yoon Chujio was ranked lower among the inner disciples. Therefore, she was basically at the end of the group. This fellow closed her eyes and was about to comprehend the sword intent when she suddenly opened her eyes. This was because she realized that there were a few wisps of drifters that were trying to jump into her forehead with ill intentions. Hei Shinjo was so angry. They were trying to find trouble with her in good faith, weren't they? Drifters and dregs, just you wait. Chapter 40-51. The buzzing sound. Hei Shinjo secretly took out a thick stack of Buddhist scriptures from her storage ring and placed them in front, back, left and right of her. There was even a large string of Buddhist beads. The drifters were obviously afraid of these things and left unwillingly. Yoon Chujio pursed her lips. She had fought with the drifters for a very long time, and these new drifters still wanted to bully her? In her dreams. However, with this torment, the little emotions that this fellow had been brewing had mostly disappeared, and he could no longer calm down and concentrate. This fellow knew that he could not force himself to comprehend the sword intent, so he simply stuck his claws into his sleeve pocket and poked. A certain one was so embarrassed and angry that he wished he could bite off this fellow's claws. Just as Yoon Chujio was enjoying herself, the drifters returned. There were even more of them than before. Yoon Chujio gritted her teeth. Were these drifters not afraid of being discovered by others? She turned around and looked around. Everyone was closing their eyes to comprehend the sword intent, so these drifters had nothing to fear. Yoon Chujio had no choice but to take out the relic from her storage ring. The drifters immediately ran away in a panic. It was obvious that they were afraid of the relic in Yoon Chujio's hands. Yoon Chujio pursed her lips. If the tiger did not show its power, did it really think that she was a sick cat? It would be better to scare these drifters to death. Just as this guy was enjoying himself, the huge sword emitted a slightly sharp buzzing sound, which scared all the people who were closing their eyes to comprehend the sword intent to open their eyes. Hei Shinjo was so scared that she shivered too. The relic in her hand almost fell to the ground. The guy quickly put it back into his storage ring. All of a sudden, everybody exploded. What's wrong with the giant sword? Nothing like this has ever happened before. Is there something wrong? Yeah, it's really unusual. How could it be like this? It won't delay our comprehension of the sword intent, will it? Delaying our comprehension of sword intent is a small matter, but please don't let it be a disaster. Listening to everyone's discussion, Hei Shinjo inexplicably felt a little guilty. It couldn't be related to the relic she took out, right? This guy was afraid of being suspected, so he hurriedly put away the Buddhist scriptures beside him into his storage ring. Unfortunately, Wan Pengcheng saw her collecting the Buddhist scriptures, so he immediately reported it to Elder Wan. Yoon Chujio once again became the focus of everyone's attention. Although she felt a little guilty, she still looked calm on the surface. She took out a few Buddhist scriptures and said, "That's right. I did take out the Buddhist scriptures, but I just wanted to use the Buddhist scriptures to quickly calm my mind. Is there a problem? If there's a problem, I took it out now. The huge sword should also make a sound, but isn't there anything unusual now?" Everyone actually felt that there was nothing wrong with it. It was just a Buddhist scripture. How could it affect the huge sword? That Wan Pengcheng really had nothing to do. However, at this moment, the huge sword once again made a buzzing sound. Yoon Chujio. Damn it, this thing was done on purpose, right? Previously, she had placed the Buddhist scripture for a long time and did not see it call out. Why did it call out now? Wan Pengcheng looked at Yoon Chujio proudly, thinking to himself, "Damn girl, you're going to be in trouble." As expected, everyone looked at Yoon Chujio with resentment. So it was really her who caused it. It was really too detestable. Wasn't this delaying them from comprehending the sword intent? Wan Pengcheng immediately snatched the Buddhist scripture from Yoon Chujio's hand. He waved the treasured sword in his hand a few times, and the few Buddhist scriptures instantly turned into dust on the ground. Chapter 40-52. Where are the bones? Almost at the moment when the Buddhist scriptures were destroyed, the humming of the huge sword stopped. This time, everyone was even more certain that it was because of these Buddhist scriptures. Elder Wan said in a businesslike tone, "Yoon Chujio, although you didn't mean it, you have already delayed everyone's comprehension of sword intent. Even if you are a disciple of our nameless sword sect, you can't go unpunished. Immediately retreat 5 miles away to reflect on your actions. The time limit is 2 days. Do you have any objections?" Elder Duamis' brows were tightly knitted. Just as he was about to plead on Yoon Chujio's behalf, he heard Yoon Chujio say crisply, "I admit my mistake. I admit my punishment." Elder Duanmu was furious. Was this little girl's brain damaged? She had spent so much effort to obtain a spot, and it was wasted just like that. One had to know that the closer one was to the giant sword, the better the effect of comprehension. If one retreated 5 miles away, what use would it be? However, Yoon Chuji's words had already left his mouth, so he naturally could not say anything more. He calculated in his heart that if it really did not work, he would think of a way to excuse her tomorrow morning. Zhao Hui and the others all looked at Yoon Chujo worriedly, but they could not help much. They could only watch as Yoon Chujo left the team with her head drooping. She walked until she was 5 miles away and sat cross-legged on the ground. Time was precious. After this small episode, everyone continued to sit cross-legged and comprehend the sword intent. Hei Shinjo lowered her voice and said to the small silver snake in her sleeve, "Little baby, I sacrificed a lot for you. Otherwise, I wouldn't have retreated here so stupidly." Hearing the words "little baby," a certain god could not help but tremble. He gritted his teeth and said, "Speak properly." Although Yoon Chujo still wanted to take advantage of him verbally, when she thought that Biming could recover at any time, her expression immediately changed. "Prince Charming, I'm joking with you. Hehehe, isn't it very funny?" The little silver snake snorted coldly and ignored her. This fellow laughed a few times in embarrassment and said, "There were too many people there just now, so we couldn't communicate. Now that I've been punished to this place, we can use this opportunity to chat. My dearest Prince Charming, where is the bone you mentioned? Anyway, I've been punished, so no one cares about me even if I wander around." Seeing Yoon Chujo being so obsequious, a certain one immediately felt much better and said in a relaxed tone, "The location of the bone is a bit special. You can't get it now, so you need to wait for the opportunity." Yoon Chujo immediately straightened her back unwillingly. "Prince Charming, you're underestimating me too much. Although I'm not as powerful as you, I didn't give it to you for nothing. Just tell me where the bone is, and I promise to dig it out for you." A certain someone said faintly, "The bone is under the giant sword." Yoon Chujo, are you fucking kidding me? Under the giant sword? If she ran to dig the bone under the giant sword, she would definitely be beaten to a pulp. Wasn't this provoking the public's anger? Yoon Chujo was stunned for a moment, but she had already said her big words, so she couldn't just admit defeat, right? Hence this fellow pretended to not care and said, all right, isn't it just under the giant sword? No problem. I promise to help you get the bone." A certain someone didn't say anything. He knew that it was a little difficult. Moreover, he hadn't thought of how to quietly get the bone. If it wasn't for the slight mistake, he could have forcefully taken the bone with his spiritual power. However, now, he could only act according to the situation. Chapter 4053 was shy again. Although Hei Xinjia's words were loud and clear, she was so worried that she wanted to bang her head against the wall. This was an impossible mission, okay? Could it be that she said to those people, "Excuse me, I want to dig something out from under the giant sword"? She would probably be beaten flat before she could finish her words. These people treated the giant sword as their ancestor. Forget about digging under the giant sword, they couldn't even get close to it. Fortunately, the Eye of Sword Intent would be open for 10 days, so there was still time to slowly plan. This guy had always been a big-hearted person. After worrying for a while, he secretly began to tease a certain god. "Prince Charming, you said that you came to get the bone. Why do I feel that you miss me too much? Did you find an excuse to travel so much and rush here because you couldn't bear the pain of missing me? You said that you would come, so you came. You even deliberately turned into a small silver snake. Are you trying to steal a kiss from me again?" The small silver snake's body was suffused with a faint pink color. He said with some embarrassment and annoyance, "Nonsense. This venerable one is here to take the bones. If you don't have a way to take the bones for the time being, then quickly comprehend the sword intent. Don't waste the opportunity." Yoon Chujo curled her lips. Whenever the pretty boy was shy, he would say "this venerable one." He was just a paper tiger. However, what he said made sense. It was not easy for her to enter the Eye of Sword Will, so she did not want to waste it. Therefore, Yoon Chujo calmed her breath and focused her mind, wanting to comprehend the sword will. However, before she could close her eyes, She saw a few drifters floating over sneakily, and they looked quite smug. Yun Chujo wanted to take out the Buddhist scriptures and relics, but she was afraid that the giant sword would call out again. She could only grit her teeth and curse softly, "Get lost. If you come near me again, I will kill you." Those drifters would not be threatened by her. They all moved closer to Yun Chujius Glabella. Yun Chujo had no choice but to take out the relics again. The drifters immediately scattered like birds and beasts. Unfortunately, the giant sword made a buzzing sound again. Everyone turned to look at Yun Chujo at the same time. Although Yun Chujo felt guilty, she looked innocent on the surface. No one saw her take out the Buddhist scriptures anyway. What else could they do to her? However, she had underestimated the greed of those people for the sword intent. Soon, a few disciples ran over and said to her, "Yun Chujo, Elder One wants you to step back another 5 miles. If you defy him, you can only be forcefully brought over." Yun Chujo had every reason to believe that if she did not do as they said, they would really bring her over. However, it was also good to be further away. She could just deal with those drifters. Thus, she said with an aggrieved expression, "All right, although I really did not do anything, I will follow Elder Wan's arrangements." After Yun Chujo finished speaking, she covered her face and ran away. Moreover, the distance she ran was more than 5 miles. Her figure shrunk into a small black dot in front of everyone's eyes. Although a few people sympathized with Yun Chujo, most people felt that she deserved it. No one paid attention to her anymore. They were all focused on comprehending the sword intent. Yun Chujo ran to a safe distance and gritted her teeth. If it weren't for those drifters, she wouldn't have been ostracized by everyone. "Damn it, I have to teach them a lesson today." The little silver snake in her sleeve pocket said worriedly, "Little Joe, you can't use Buddhist scriptures and relics. How are you going to teach those murderous auras a lesson?" Chapter 4054. The reason for the humming of the giant sword. Hei Shinjo revealed a sinister smile and said fiercely, "Scare them to death." Di Biming was at a loss. "Scare them to death? Are you sure you are not talking nonsense?" Soon a few drifters came over. Yun Chujo immediately pointed at the sky and cursed, "Tian Dao, you old bastard. Get out here now. Did you release these drifters? Quickly put these drifters away, or I will scold you 8 times a day." Those few drifters were so shocked that they almost couldn't even drift. There was actually someone in this world who dared to scold Tian Dao. Wasn't this courting death? It didn't matter if she was courting death, but if she attracted the heavenly lightning, wouldn't it implicate them? Thus, those few drifters stumbled and drifted away. Yun Chujo curled her lips. Although this method could only be used for a while, it could be used for a while. The crux of the problem now was, why did that damn huge sword buzz the moment she took out the relic? Yun Chujo and Di Biming discussed for a while, but they did not come to any useful conclusion. Yun Chujo simply sat cross-legged and meditated, wanting to take advantage of this time to comprehend the sword intent. At this moment, the sky gradually darkened. Yun Chujo meditated for a while, but she did not gain anything. Instead, more and more drifters gathered. During the day, these drifters might have been afraid, so only a few dared to show off. Now, under the cover of the night, they all floated over. Although Yun Chujo was afraid of the humming of the giant sword again, she was not stupid enough to let the murderous aura enter between her brows. Therefore, she gritted her teeth and took out the relic, but she was surprised to find that the giant sword did not make a humming sound. Yun Chuji's heart moved. Damn! She understood. The humming of the giant sword during the day was the trick of these drifters. No wonder they were so cooperative with her. Now that she was so far away from the giant sword and these drifters had all run here, they naturally could not make any more humming sounds. Although the drifters were afraid that Yun Chujo was holding the relic and retreated a distance, they did not give up and still looked eager to give it a try. Yun Chujo was so angry that she gritted her teeth. She held the relic in her left hand and pointed at the drifters with her right hand and scolded, "Don't pester me anymore, or I will make you regret it for the rest of your lives. No, for 8 lifetimes. When the drifters heard Yun Chuji's words, they let out sizzling sounds. It was obvious that they were mocking her. Yun Chujo was so angry. These drifters were even more detestable than the drifters in her courtyard. Moreover, they were even more daring. If she were to be pestered by them all the time, not to mention comprehending the sword intent, she would definitely go crazy. What should she do? Was there really nothing she could do about these drifters? Yun Chujo thought about it and stomped her feet. She could only fight fire with fire. Yun Chujo immediately took out 3 puppet discs. She had already thought about it. If things were to develop in a good direction, it would be a battle between 2 groups of murderous auras. She could then sit back and reap the benefits. Of course, if the drifters of the sword pool won, that would be the best. Even if the worst outcome was that 2 groups of drifters worked together to take care of her, it was not a big deal since she had the Saraira in her hands. As soon as Yun Chujo took out the puppet plate, the drifters in it flew out impatiently. They were dumbfounded when they saw the indigenous drifters not far away. The indigenous drifters were not any better. Some of them even collapsed on the ground in shock. Hei Shinjo blinked her eyes and said to the drifters in the sword pool, "Haven't you always said that you are the strongest killing intent in the world? But just now these drifters said that they are 10,000 times stronger than you." The shameless provocation immediately had an effect. The 2 drifters immediately struggled and rolled in the air. Chapter 40-55. You can still be useful sometimes. Hei Shinjo squinted her eyes and looked at the scene in front of her. She was so happy. She lowered her voice and said to the small silver snake in her sleeve pocket, "My Prince Charming, did you see that? No matter if it's a person or a thing, they have to grow a brain. I just need to move my mouth and let them bite each other." Although Debeiming also praised Yun Chujia's intelligence, he knew that she was a person who liked to be bullied. Therefore, he said indifferently, "The matter hasn't been settled yet. Let's wait and see." Yun Chujo curled her lips. "Do you still need to wait and see? These 2 groups of drifters are obviously incompatible with each other. They must be beaten until their heads bleed. I'll just wait and see if I can reap the benefits." However, Hei Shinjo was soon dumbfounded. That was because she realized that although the 2 groups of drifters were entangled, they did not look like they were fighting with their lives on the line. Instead, they looked like they were playing and they were having a great time. This fellow's head immediately buzzed. It was over. He had shot himself in the foot. Just as this fellow was feeling miserable, he saw the sword pool drifter and the native drifter throwing the 3 puppet plates in the air as if they were balls. It was simply wonderful. This fellow consoled himself. If he was willing to play, he could play. As long as he didn't attack her, he could just treat these 3 puppet discs as food for the dogs. However, while the idea was beautiful, reality was cruel. The 2 groups of floating sword pool were most likely tired of playing with the puppet discs and decided to play with a certain Jiu. They surrounded her with ill intentions. Yun Chujo waved the Saraira in her hand. She shouted in exasperation, "You bunch of white-eyed floating sword pool. If it weren't for me, would you have waited 1,000 years? If it weren't for me, would you have met each other all the way from the mountains and rivers? How dare you attack me instead of being grateful to me? Have you lost your conscience to dogs?" No, these idiots obviously didn't know what conscience was. Although they were intimidated by the relic in Yun Chujia's hand, they still approached Yun Chujo. Yun Chujo regretted it. She was so smart that she was fooled. What should she do now? Even if she used her heel to think, if these idiots entered her forehead, nothing good would happen. Maybe she would turn into a monster who killed people like a horse. Just as Yun Chujo was sweating profusely, the small silver snake in her sleeve suddenly said, "Do you still have the Buddha lotus from the fallen god Abyss in your storage ring? Take it out." Buddha lotus? Yun Chujo didn't react at first, but she soon came to her senses. Back then, the old monk planted a lot of lotus flowers in the lake of the fallen god Abyss. She thought it was a 1,000-leaf golden-grade lotus, but the old monk kept saying that it was a Buddha lotus. Later, because she ate the disguise pill made from the Buddha lotus and turned into a little girl, she still had a lot of Buddha lotuses in her storage ring. However, would that thing be useful? However, she could only try her best now. Therefore, Hei Shinjo took out a few Buddha lotuses from her storage ring and waved them at the drifters. See? These are Buddha lotuses. There will be golden old monks coming out from them. You'll be scared to death. Yun Chujo said this to scare the drifters, but the effect was surprisingly good. The native drifters instantly drifted away, and the drifters from the sword pool entered the puppet plate. It was as if nothing had happened before. Yun Chujo was stunned for a moment, and then she said faintly, "My Prince Charming, I have to say that you are useful sometimes. A certain one." Chapter 4056 Prince Charming, you really know a lot. After Hei Shinjo finished her sentence, she realized that there was an 80% chance that she was going to suffer. However, to her surprise, a certain someone only responded with a faint shh. She didn't know what he meant. "Prince Charming, what I wanted to say just now is that you are always very useful. Did you hear wrong?" Hei Shinjo said with a little guilt. "You are also right. I am indeed useless most of the time. When you are in danger, I cannot be by your side," a certain someone said lightly. When Yun Chujo heard this, she knew that although the certain someone was not angry, he was a little annoyed. Otherwise, he would not have said my. It had to be said that every man did not care about his face. Was this hurting his self-esteem? This guy quickly changed the topic and started to smooth out his hair without batting an eyelid. "Prince Charming, I have already forgotten about the Buddha lotus. Fortunately, you reminded me in time. Otherwise, I really would not have been able to do anything to those drifters. Prince Charming, you are very knowledgeable. Tell me, how did you know that the Buddha lotus was useful to those drifters?" "I am only guessing. Since those drifters are even afraid of the Buddhist scriptures, and the Buddha lotus was specially planted by Master Wang Su to purify the murderous aura, I guess it is also useful to the murderous aura," Di Biming said slowly. Naturally, he was not really angry because of one sentence. When he heard Yun Chuji's cautious and slightly flattering question, the slight awkwardness in his heart disappeared. Yun Chujo nodded repeatedly when she heard it. In order to make up for the wrong words he said just now, this guy started to flatter her. "Idol, you know too much. I really admire you too much. I have to say one of the best things I've done since I was young was to fall in love with you. You are simply the best husband in the world." Although a certain being knew that Hei Shinjo was trying to curry favor with him, it did not stop the entire snake from feeling extremely comfortable. It wished that Yun Chujo could continue to speak. When Hei Shinjo saw that a certain being had finally calmed down, only then did she change the topic. "Male God, although this Buddha lotus is useful to those drifters, these damn things are getting bolder and bolder. In the beginning, they were very afraid of the relic. After a while, I think they are not too afraid anymore." Di Biming was also uncertain. The killing aura was different from humans or demonic beasts. Not only were they mischievous, but they also seemed to be indestructible. There was really nothing anyone could do about it. He thought for a while and said, "You don't have to worry too much. Since those murderous auras saved you last time, it means that they don't want your life, so they won't force you too much. You just have to be careful. Also, when you were in the sect, these murderous auras weren't so arrogant. I'm afraid it has something to do with the environment here. When you leave, they will naturally stop." Yun Chujo heard Di Biming's analysis and felt that it made sense. When she went to the Blood Sand Island previously, the drifters could only hide in the puppet disc and did not dare to come out. Now they were dealing with her together with the indigenous drifters. It was obvious that they had gained the courage of a dog for some reason. In the future, when she left the Nameless Sword sect, these drifters would not pose any threat to her. Thinking of this, Hei Shinjo immediately felt much more relaxed. She also had the intention to tease a certain honored master. However, a single sentence from a certain honored master dispelled her thoughts. "Little Jiao, since the killing intent has already left, you should properly comprehend the sword intent." Chapter 4057. Quickly play with the drifter. Hei Shinjo thought about it and agreed. She was here to comprehend sword intent, not to tease the gigolo. The gigolo had always had the opportunity to tease her. It was not easy to obtain the Eye of Sword Intent, so she could not let it go to waste. Therefore, the guy sat cross-legged and began to comprehend sword intent. Perhaps it was because he was too far away from the giant sword, but he did not gain anything until dawn. Later, he simply let Buttface out to be on guard, and she fell asleep. Dog 2 glanced at the giant sword in the distance, and doubt flashed in its eyes, but it didn't say anything. It just lay down beside Yun Chujo and looked around vigilantly with its dog eyes. It was unknown if the drifters were very afraid of Buddha Lotus, but they didn't appear until dawn. While Yun Chujo was sleeping soundly, Dog 2 woke her up. "Little fairy, someone is coming." Yun Chujo frowned. This fellow hated people disturbing her sleep the most, but she had no choice but to put Buttface into the spirit beast pouch and look up. As expected, 2 figures appeared in the distance. When they walked in, they were Zhao Hui and Li Zhuangji. "Junior sister Yun, Elder Duanmu helped you plead for mercy this morning and asked us to bring you back. Junior sister Yun, are you all right?" Zhao Hui felt a little guilty, however. He was just an ordinary inner sect disciple. He really couldn't be of much help with the situation yesterday. When Yun Chujo heard that she was to go back, her anger dissipated a little after she woke up. Whether it was comprehending the sword intent or finding a way to obtain the bone, she had to be closer to the giant sword. This fellow thought to herself that it wasn't in vain for her to curry favor with old man Duanmu recently. At the critical moment she was still reliable. However, those damn drifters wouldn't play any more tricks, right? If she waited until she returned and the huge sword hummed again, those people would definitely expel her again. Perhaps they would expel her even further. Therefore, Yun Chujo followed Zhao Hui and Li Zhuangji back to their original positions with some uneasiness in her heart. Elder Duanmu gave her a warning glance. His meaning was self-evident. He wanted her to be more obedient and not cause any more trouble. Hei Shinjo felt bitter in her heart. It wasn't that she wasn't being honest, it was just that those drifters were too hateful. Just as she was thinking about it, she saw a few strands of drifters stealthily drifting over from the giant sword. Yun Chujo felt her headache. What should she do? She couldn't just watch those drifters get their way, right? However, no matter what she did, the giant sword would probably buzz. It was really going to kill her. It was not that Yun Chujo did not think of shouting to attract everyone's attention. However, the killing aura was too bizarre. Who would believe it? Moreover, the killing aura was very faint. It would dissipate at any moment. When that time came, she would have to bear the blame again. This was also not possible. That was also not possible. It was really worrying. At this time, the killing aura had already floated in front of Yun Chujo. It was trying to get close to her eyebrows with ill intentions. Yun Chujo stood up in a hurry and took out a tree branch from her storage ring. She jumped into the empty space and began to gesture. Others might think that this fellow was waving around randomly, but in reality, this fellow was attacking the few drifters. After all, when she was in the nameless sword sect, she would use the drifters to practice her swordsmanship whenever she was free. She had some experience dealing with these drifters. Moreover, she vaguely realized that the drifters in the sword pool liked to practice their sword skills with her. Perhaps these native drifters also liked it. Needless to say, Hei Shinjo was right. When the few strands of drifters saw Yun Chujo waving the tree branches to play with them, they immediately jumped up and down happily. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Sword of Destiny YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.